Week been?
It's good. I'm settled in our little town in Idaho, and yeah, recently moved from the carnage that is Seattle and Washington State. So I'm glad we're I'm glad we're getting out of there.
Uh, that's cool. Did you buy a new house?
No, we're renting for now. So
Gotcha.
yeah.
All right, I think everything is live. Do the little is the sound working question mark. Put that in the chat, and they can tell me if that's working. So, Seth, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation with me. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure. So my name is Seth Bloomsberg. I live in Moscow, Idaho, and I've been a Christian my whole life. Growing up in Moscow, Idaho, people probably might recognize the name Doug Wilson. He started Logos and NSA, and he's the pastor of Christ Church. Go to his church and graduated from NSA, and actually did my undergraduate thesis on apologetics, and he was actually my advisor for it. So I've gotten myself tangled up in internet debates here and there over the past couple of years. So I'm always happy to do it a little more.
Cool. And you are a presuppositionalist, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So, my understanding of presuppositionalism is that it claims that you can't have knowledge without the Christian God. Is that right?
That's more or less correct. There's more detail to it. Van Til always used the um, he would kind of use this line where he said, "Unbelievers frequently can count, but they cannot account for their counting. They cannot provide a worldview in which knowledge is possible." Now, that doesn't mean they don't know anything, but they can know facts in spite of the worldview that they espouse too. So if somebody says, "Well, I don't think there is any absolute truth," and then they go on and rightly condemn genocide. Well, they're rightly condemning genocide, but they cannot account for that in the worldview, the relativistic worldview that they hold to, where there isn't any absolute truth.
So, like the moral argument, atheists can be moral because God exists, even though they don't believe in objective morality or anything that could ground it, something like that.
Correct. I mean, there are atheists who, can, do all sorts of quote unquote good things, and they think that, they think there's, I mean, some atheists do believe there is objective morality, some don't. They're not all in one box.
But the
But
same principle would apply to having knowledge. Like atheists can have knowledge because God exists to ground knowledge, just like atheists can be moral because God exists to ground morality, even if the atheists don't believe in the God, something like that.
correct, yeah.
Okay, so my position is that I can have knowledge by my definition, but it seems like the presuppositionalist definition of knowledge is different than mine because if we had the same definition, then we would agree we could both have knowledge. So, what is your definition of knowledge and justification that that essentially no other worldview other than Christianity can meet?
So to the pretty typical classical definition of knowledge, it's a justified true belief. So you need all three elements in order to have knowledge. And the thing that I think is always missing from an atheist perspective is the justification part. An atheist, I don't think, can ever ultimately justify a knowledge claim.
So, what is your criterion from justification? So, because my definition of justification, we can already meet that. Most philosophers' definition of justification, we can already meet that. What
Mhm.
is different about your definition that makes it so that only Christianity can meet that?
So, well, it would depend largely on the kind of knowledge claim that you're making. Different knowledge claims require different methods of argumentation, different evidence. So, if somebody wants to show me a math proof, that'd be different than showing me evidence that Sasquatch exists. In order to prove to me that Sasquatch exists, all they would have to do is find a Sasquatch body or a live Sasquatch or a pretty clearly convincing photograph or movie or whatever. Um, Now, that could prove that Sasquatch exists, but it would be virtually impossible to prove that Sasquatch doesn't exist, right? So, with that kind of knowledge claim, you'd have to basically have omniscience. You'd have to occupy every location on Earth simultaneously in order to know that he definitely didn't exist. But in principle, proving that Sasquatch exists would be in principle, much easier. But that would be different than some kind of, showing me that a math proof is valid, for example, because you can If you go through the methods of argumentation, you can talk about, oh, well, you're changing definition here, or you're misusing this axiom here, or something like that. So different knowledge claims do have different, depending on the field that you're talking about, it has different methods of argumentation and different evidences.
I'm not so your position as a presuppositionalist is that only Christianity can have like any knowledge, right? Like
only Christianity provides a worldview in which any knowledge claim can be justified.
right. So I'm asking about that specifically. So what is your definition of justification in which only Christianity can provide that and no other worldview can provide that?
Well, because if you adopt, and I can give you examples, because if you adopt any other worldview, it's not possible. My reason for thinking that is if you adopt a different worldview, it's not possible to justify a knowledge claim.
Well,
For example,
I'd grant that, but I'm asking why is it not possible? So I need you to give a definition of justification that shows why it's not possible. Just saying it's not possible, I mean, like that's the same as your argument. Your argument is that only knowledge is possible under Christianity, which would also
right.
mean the same thing as it's not possible for any other worldview to have it. But I need a definition of justification that can explain why that's the case.
Okay, so as far as a definition of justification, if you look at Scripture, it allows for um, different knowledge. So we're encouraged in Scripture to, it says in Isaiah, "Come, let us reason together." And one of the touchstones for knowing whether something was scriptural revelation or not is does it contradict prior revelation? So you have the law of non-contradiction right in there. So in order for something to be justified in Christianity, it would have to follow the law of non-contradiction. If you're talking about a rational proof, so to contrast that with somebody, say, like Bertrand Russell, in his book The Problems of Philosophy, he is basically a strict empiricist. So his definition of justification is there has to be empirical evidence. That's the only evidence that exists. In order for something to be true, there has to be empirical evidence for it. Now, I'm okay with having empirical claims. So I think there needs to be empirical evidence for empirical claims. But I'm not going to say that it is the only method of justification at all.
Well, logical empiricists and logical positivists all grant that there's the analytic synthetic distinction and that analytic statements are true by definition, so those are still count as knowledge. They don't.
I actually have a problem with the analytic synthetic distinction. But,
well, that's fine. So I mean, just to rephrase it, they all grant that logic and math are true and can be knowledge without empirical evidence. So they don't think that literally you need empirical evidence for those things either.
Okay.
But so you said that. So I'm asking for your definition of justification. And you said your justification has to follow the law of non-contradiction. That's the only thing you've told me so far. And every worldview does that, is most of them, except the crazy ones.
Not if you're an empiricist. Depending on the worldview that you adopt, you have a different view of what justification is. So your definition of what
no.
Is,
so I'm saying your definition of justification. The only thing you have provided so far is it follows the law of non-contradiction.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to fill it out. I'm trying to tell you, okay, this is the kind of thing that can be justified in. I mean, a short definition would be just, a belief is justified if there's evidence for it.
Okay.
But then you have to okay, what counts as evidence? And different worldviews count different things as evidence.
Right. I'm only interested in your worldview. So, like, if your worldview, whatever your worldview counts as evidence, is what I'm interested in. I don't care about the empiricist. So, like,
okay.
if and what I'm trying to compare is here is if by your definition, what you count as evidence, would like the empiricists, whatever they're doing, would count as evidence by your definition, then it doesn't matter if they count as evidence or not. What matters is that their worldview provides what you claim is knowledge. And so
I think, okay, so in the Christian worldview, you can justify empirical claims, you can justify inductive claims, you can justify logical and rational claims. Those all count as evidence in the Christian worldview.
Okay, so I'm looking for your definition of justification, your definition of evidence. I need to know what qualifies and what doesn't qualify.
Well, anything. So again, if you're talking about a specific claim, the kind of evidence that would be allowed for that claim depends on the kind of claim it is.
Any knowledge claim, like the most basic, simple knowledge claim. I'm asking, like, what is it about the Christian worldview that only the Christian worldview can provide any knowledge claim at all for the minimum claim of knowledge, whatever you want that to be?
Okay, well, those are two different questions. So on the one hand, you're asking me, how do you know that Christianity is the only true worldview? And then on the other hand, you're asking me is what counts as evidence for the Christian? Well, there are all sorts of things that count. For example, if I want to, one of the evidences
No,
in
no, I'm
Scripture
not
that,
asking about what counts as evidence. I'm asking your definition of evidence. I don't need like examples. I want like literally a definition. So I want a definition of justification or evidence. I'm using those synonymously here. That only the Christian worldview can fit in that definition. Can only the Christian worldview can meet that criteria
right?
and establish knowledge.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that you're asking one question and expecting the answer to a different question. Okay,
Huh?
so what I'm saying is, okay, whatever counts as justification, you know, is a belief is justified if there's evidence for that belief.
Oh, he froze. Uh, Open Messenger. Hey guys, how's it going? So he's still on Facebook. We're chatting on Facebook. To rejoin. Thanks, Donna. Active God. VZRYV. How am I? I'm normal. Same as usual. Viziriv. Viziriv? Viziriv? Is that? Viziriv. VZ? Darth's face broke the internet. How is the chair? The chair is soft and comfortable as normal. Um, his connection also struggled. Ugh. Photographic proof of so-called God. You got to look at the trees. It's got to look at the trees. Is my chair sentient? Obviously. All right. I cannot hear you. I see you're in. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Uh, I see you. Can you hear me now? Hmm. What do you think about the whole UFO thing? Well, the UFO thing is easy. Like, the UFO thing is just there's stuff we can't explain, and people say it must be aliens, and that's it. And the government report specifically said we don't know what it is, and that's it. It's like, oh, the U in UFO stands for unidentified, and we don't know what it is. It's unidentified, and that's it. Um, will you be selling chairs anytime? And yeah, if you want to send me the money, I can get you a chair, but the chairs cost like $1,000. All right, now I can see you.
I'm back. Okay, cool.
Yeah, looks
Sorry
looks
about that.
good. All right. So yes,
Yeah. So here's the thing.
you are a little quiet.
Oh, it says I'm kind of quiet.
Yeah, like I don't think it's coming through your mic. I think it's coming through your like.
It's probably coming through my phone.
Yeah. Could you plug in your headphones to your phone? Would that work?
I don't have a jack on my phone to do that.
Gotcha. See, I could probably just turn up your volume on my end.
Okay.
Okay, try talking now.
Hello.
Keep going. Keep making lots of noise.
Hello. 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 1, 2, 3. Test. Test. Test.
All right, that seems like it'll work.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, the presuppositional
evidence in the Christian worldview. Okay.
Well, I wanted to clarify what I'm asking here. So the presuppositional worldview says only Christianity can account for knowledge, which
Correct.
means there has to be some definition or criteria of what knowledge is, and only Christianity can meet that. So I want to know what the definition of knowledge, justification, evidence is, and I want to test other worldviews to see if they can meet that definition. So first, I just want a definition of knowledge, justification, evidence, whatever the definition is, that only Christianity can meet.
Okay, so in Christianity, knowledge is essentially thinking God's thoughts after him. So God has all original knowledge. So I can't have knowledge unless God had knowledge first. So I can know anything as a creature. So anything that I know as a creature is something God already knew. Whatever exists in reality that my mind. Let's see. I guess I'm getting a little confused maybe as to, I feel like I answer the question and then you're asking me. I mean, at some point definitions become always circular. It's like, well, what's true? Well, whatever is true is whatever corresponds to reality. Oh, well, what's reality? Well, whatever is true and exists is reality. So at some point, definitions are just going to become circular. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but obviously, but that wouldn't, like, a definition is just saying this word means that word, but I'm asking for a criterion. So my criterion is...
Okay, criteria I can talk about.
So criteria, evidence, knowledge, I'm asking for what the criterion of knowledge is. What are all of the things that something needs to meet in order for it to count as knowledge? And whatever this criteria is, you're claiming that only Christianity can meet this criteria, whatever these criteria are.
Okay, so something can be knowledge if it's found in the mind of God.
Something can be knowledge if it's found in the mind of God.
Yes. Human knowledge is man thinking God's thoughts after him.
Oh, God.
Now, obviously, God is omniscient. We're not. So there are also all sorts of things that he can know that we can't. But anything we know is something he already knew and pre-interpreted and created. So there are no uncreated original thoughts in my mind. It all conforms to the reality that God has created. So I can have knowledge only if it conforms to the reality that God has created. What that means is I can have, I can talk about mathematics and rational claims, and I can provide evidence for those. I can have empirical claims and provide evidence for those. I can make scientific or historical claims and bring evidence for those. But overall, there's no foundational worldview for those unless you have Christianity. As an example, if you look at Bertrand Russell's The Problems of Philosophy, he explicitly says the only possible knowledge is empirical knowledge. Okay, let's take that for a second. Well, the problem is that kind of a worldview is self-refuting, because that claim itself cannot be empirically verified. You cannot empirically verify that the only possible knowledge is empirical knowledge. So in other words, that claim has to be rejected. So if you have a worldview that's empiricistic, only empirical claims, empiricism through and through, consistent empiricism, it's a self-refuting worldview. So Bertrand Russell, with that worldview, can't know anything. He can't know rational claims because you can't empirically verify universal knowledge claims because you don't have all knowledge. You can't empirically verify empirical claims.
Well, I mean, that's so that's kind of. Oh, I'm hearing like an echo of myself, my own voice. It's weird. Testing. Yeah, it's still pretty bad.
Okay.
Uh,
Let me try joining on my computer again.
all right. Oh, you'd have to leave first because there's only two spots.
Oh, okay. All right, give me 1 second.
All right, sound is better. Cool. Oh god,
Yep.
now you're super loud though. All right, so yeah, that's a lot better on the sound. Let's hope the connection stays up this time.
Okay.
So you said knowledge is anything within the mind of God.
Yes.
That seems to be a bit begging the question. So like,
sure, because then you're assuming that God exists, right? I get that. And that's the foundation of the Christian worldview, is that if God doesn't exist, if we don't have knowledge of him, then we can't know anything at all. And as an example, I'm giving empiricism. Now, I want to be clear that Christians don't reject empirical claims. We're not
empiricism,
empirical.
I mean, that's technically an incorrect character of empiricism. So empiricism grants you can have knowledge which is purely a priori, and the a priori principle only
not
empirical.
Consistent empiricism, and Bertrand Russell didn't allow that.
It does. He always did. So this is a common confusion between the logical positivism. It literally states it on the Stanford Encyclopedia for logical positivism, while logical positivism addressing all of the entire Venetian circle of AJA or Bertrand Russell. This applies to every single one of them.
Okay.
But I don't really want to talk about empiricism. I don't really care. It's not my position. But what I'm curious about here is that you said that the only thing that counts as knowledge is a thought in the mind of God. Now that seems
thinking God's thoughts after him.
Yeah, thinking God's thoughts after him. So
as a creature,
for me, I don't see why does it need to be God's thoughts? What is the rationale behind knowledge could only be God's thoughts and nothing else could be knowledge?
Because there's nothing outside of God that exists, or there's nothing outside of the mind of God that is knowledge.
Oh, well, that's just saying the same thing twice, but I need to know why. So I need to know why does the thoughts of God count as knowledge, but nothing else counts as knowledge? Like, what is
This is the foundation. Okay, here's the thing. You're getting at the point, the a priori presuppositions of the Christian worldview, but that's something that you're going to find with any worldview. Every worldview has a foundation, and at some point you're going to start reasoning circularly for that foundation. Empiricists do this because okay, well, why only empirical knowledge? Well, empirical objects are the only ones that exist. Well, how do you know empirical objects are the only ones that exist? Well, those are the only ones that exist that it can be known. I mean, if you're an empiricist, you're by definition, like that's your foundation. You're saying that's
no
your circle.
empiricists have ever said that. So all empiricists grant logic is knowledge, and you don't need empirical knowledge for that. Every single one of them, they've always granted that. So,
that's because they're inconsistent, and I don't think Hume did.
They're not inconsistent again because there's extra criterion in there that you're skipping over. But empiricism does not matter to the conversation. So you are.
Yes, it does.
Seems
you're
like
asking for examples about how other worldviews.
No, I don't care about the other worldviews. I'm not interested in the other worldviews. I'm interested in yours and only yours.
But you earlier asked me if you give me an example of why the other worldviews can't work. I'm just explaining that.
No. I'm only interested in your definition. So I don't need anything about empiricism. You said that knowledge is thinking God's thoughts after Him, and my question is why? Why does only that count as knowledge? And you said that's just something you presuppose.
No, the reason that that's the only thing that counts as knowledge is there is no knowledge outside of God's mind that's original. Obviously, there's knowledge in our minds, but it's derivative knowledge.
Right, but that's just the same thing. You're saying the same thing again. But I'm asking, like, why? What is your definition of knowledge and justification that makes that true? So, like,
okay, let me illustrate it this way. Why don't you give me your definition of knowledge or justification, and why? What do you think knowledge is?
Justified true belief is my definition of knowledge. Justification is just a reason to believe that your belief corresponds to reality. So how
do you know what reality is?
You don't need to. Like so,
well,
so
you can't have knowledge.
No, that's by your definition, not by mine. My definition.
By your definition, you can't have knowledge.
No, my definition doesn't require certainty. My definition doesn't require you need to know reality. It's not a thing. You just need a reason to believe it is. No, that's by your definition. So again, you're conflating your definition to mine. My definition doesn't entail knowing reality. We don't need that. We just need a reason to think it's true about reality. So like, I have a reason to think there's a TV in front of me. I can see it. Maybe
why?
I'm in the Matrix, but it doesn't make a difference. I can see it. That's the reason. I can see it.
Okay.
So wait. Let me go through.
Let
me go through. So if I have a reason to, so I have a belief. I believe there's a TV in front of me. I have a reason to believe there's a TV in front of me. I see it. Now, if it's the case, if in reality there is a TV in front of me, then now that's a belief that I have. I believe there's a TV. It's a justified belief. I have a sense experience that gives me a reason to believe it. And it's true because that's true about reality. Now, I don't even know. I don't need to know anything about reality. I don't need to know anything about reality because it's true whether or not I know what reality is. It doesn't make a difference. So there's three criteria for my definition of knowledge: justified, true, belief. Belief is I believe there is a TV in front of me. So that's obviously I have that belief. Justified means I need to have any single reason to think it's true. That's it. It doesn't need. I don't need to prove it. Why do you have
any trust in your empirical ability?
Doesn't make a difference. I can just say I do, and that's fine. It still counts as a justification.
Well, then you're just being arbitrary.
That's fine. That doesn't make a difference. So, my definition.
So wait!
Stop! There are three criteria I'm listing. I don't want to go into it's very, very complicated what knowledge counts as. So I'm just going to give you the very, very base version. Mine has three criteria: justified, true, belief. I have a justification, I see it. I have a belief, I believe it. And if it's true about reality, then it's true, and then therefore it meets my definition of knowledge. Those are all the criteria required, and that's how to meet them. There's nothing else required. So everything that you think, like having to know everything about reality, I don't need that for my definition.
Okay, but according to your definition, you're saying you have to have true justified belief, and you're saying, well, it's true in reality, and then you're saying I don't know anything about reality.
Well, no. I'm saying no. I'm saying
hold on. Let me finish my criticism.
You missed. No. So I'm not saying it's true about. I'm not saying I know it's true about reality. That's not a part of the argument. So it's like
you're giving me a definition of knowledge.
Yes. So like either there is a TV in front of me, or there is not a TV in front of me, right?
Only if the laws of logic are true.
Yeah, so just grant it for the explanation here. So either there is, it doesn't just go with it for the explanation here. So either there is a TV in front of me or there isn't a TV in front of me. So I have a belief there's a TV in front of me. I have a justified belief there's a TV in front of me. There's two possibilities. One, it's false, there is no TV. One, it's true, there is a TV. I don't need to know either one of these. I don't need to know at all. If it's the case that it's true, regardless of whether or not that is knowledge of mine, then I now have a justified true belief. Because I have a justified belief, I see the TV. I have a belief, I believe the TV is there. Now, there's a 50-50 chance it's either true or false. If it's true, then this is knowledge, because now it's a justified true belief.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't need to know it's true. That part's irrelevant. So there's 3 criteria for mind of knowledge: justified true belief. That means all justified true belief. I see a TV, and so that would count as knowledge under my definition. So I've given you a criterion of what counts as knowledge in my worldview.
No, but you see what? So when I discuss other worldviews and other definitions of knowledge, I do what's called an internal critique. The problem is that you don't seem to be recognizing. I mean, you're talking about here's my definition of knowledge,
Right.
and in order for it to be knowledge, it has to be true. And then you're
Yep.
turning right around and saying, I don't have to have any knowledge. I don't have to know anything about reality. But in order to know that it's true, you have to have knowledge of reality. And then you're turning around and saying something that undermines your whole argument. I don't have to know anything about reality.
No. So something is true regardless of whether or not I know it, right? It is either, like, if the TV is there, I don't need to know it. It's there whether or not I know it.
That's true that it either exists or it doesn't, but that's not something you can justify in your world.
I don't need to. So if the
To make
TV
a
exists,
knowledge
no, stop. You're not understanding the argument here. So if the TV exists, or any fact about reality is true, regardless of whether or not I know it, the facts are there. I don't need to know them, right? They're true or false. They're there. The truth of the claim is independent of my knowledge of it. Correct?
That is true, and I can justify that claim in
That's
my
fine. So
worldview.
wait. So in order
But you
for
can't
stop.
know that the
This
laws
doesn't
of
matter.
logic-
This doesn't matter to the argument. You're missing the point here. So if I have a belief the TV is in front of me, that belief is justified. The truth of the claim is completely independent of me. Makes no difference. What I believe, what I think, the truth of the claim is completely independent. So I have a belief there is a TV. I have a justification for that belief. And if it's true, that whether or not it's true is something completely independent of me. So it could be true. And if it is true, if it happens to be true randomly, then I have all 3 criteria of knowledge. I have a justification, I have a belief, and it's true.
Yeah, but then you have completely arbitrary. It's not really knowledge if it's completely random or
By your
arbitrary.
definition. So it met my definition. I gave you the 3 criteria. It's met through all 3 criteria. Whether or not it accepts
No,
your definition doesn't matter here.
No, it doesn't even fulfill your own definition.
Yes, it does. I saw justification, belief, true. I have a justification. I see it. I have a belief. And if it's true, then it's met all 3.
Okay, what's your basis for believing that sense perception can give you any knowledge at all?
That's just presupposition. It doesn't make a difference.
Okay, you can presuppose that that's fine, but is there any outside? I mean,
Well, it doesn't. Again, I'm just giving you my definition. This is my definition of knowledge, so it meets my definition of knowledge. Now, whether you agree or not makes no difference. I don't care if you agree with my definition. My question to you is, what is your definition, and why does your definition can only be met by the Christian God? So you said you define knowledge.
Those are 2 claims. I can go for both of them.
Okay.
Okay, you're saying what is your definition, and then how do you know it's true? Okay, I already gave my definition.
No, I don't care how you know it's true. That's the separate part. So I'm
literally just asked me to answer that.
No, I don't. I'm not interested in your epistemology here. I'm just looking for your criterion of what knowledge is. That's it. I don't want to know how you know it's the case. That's not what I'm interested in.
Well, my criterion of knowledge is it a fact in the mind of God?
Okay.
Yeah.
And why does knowledge need to meet that criteria? I don't understand.
There is no knowledge outside of his mind. Besides we have derivative knowledge, but there's no original knowledge outside of him. He has knowledge of everything.
Okay, that's the part where I'm getting lost in the conversation. So, like,
well, you're talking to a Christian, because so.
Well, my goal here is just to understand more about presuppositionalism, because I don't really get the worldview, so that's why I wanted to invite you on, so I could try to understand it better. I don't understand why knowledge would need to be something in the mind of God at all, as opposed to something like my definition. Like, so my definition is just there is something true about reality. We don't know what it is right now. I have a justification and a belief about that, and if it happens to be true, then it counts as knowledge, because I have a belief, a justification, and it's true. Why would yours be a better definition of knowledge than mine? I don't get it.
Well, again, I would go back to under your definition, and I'm not saying I'm not using my own definition to critique your definition. I'm using your definition to critique your worldview. In your worldview, there's no reliable indicator of what knowledge actually is. It's all random. It's all chance.
Well, I never said that in my definition, so that would be false. That'd be a straw man.
That's what it implies.
No, that was never in my definition. That's a straw man. So that's something that
it's not a straw man.
That's your worldview. That's not mine.
No, hold on. It's not a straw. It's saying so if I point out that your definition of something implies, your definition is A, and A implies B, and you're like, well, I'm not saying B. That's a straw man. No, I'm I'm saying A implies B. I'm not saying A is B. Now, maybe you disagree that A implies B, but
No,
I'm trying to
there's
explain how A
there's
implies B.
yeah. So truth. Remember, something is true independent of whether or not I know it. Truth isn't arbitrary. Truth is fixed. So knowledge is
Yeah,
fixed.
but your
Knowledge isn't
definition
arbitrary.
makes it arbitrary.
No, my definition doesn't make things true or false. It can't affect the truth or the falsity.
No. What I'm saying is you're claiming on the one hand, oh, I believe in truth is objective, and then the definition that you use implies that it is not objective.
No. Like what?
Well, let me
So
explain. The argument.
remember what I said before. Something is true regardless of whether or not I know it. There are facts about reality, and my knowledge is irrelevant to them completely. So my knowledge does not in any way affect any of the true or false things about reality. So none of it's
affects
arbitrary.
whether you can know it.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant to the truth or the false. The truth itself is completely set. There's no arbitrariness there. The truth is truth, and that's it. There's no arbitrariness to truth.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so in my worldview, that's the case. So you can't say that's truth is arbitrary in my definition because it's not.
But your definition implies that it's not. I'm saying there's an internal tension in your world. Are you saying there's this?
No, it doesn't. And I literally just told you this like 4 times. Truth is true, independent of anything I know. Therefore, it is by definition cannot ever be arbitrary. There's no arbitrariness there. Literally cannot be in my world.
You're saying that on the one hand, and then the definition implies that it's not.
No, where? How do you get that? Like, I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay,
That doesn't make no sense. It's complete straw man.
No, saying that your view implies something is not a straw man. So you're saying on the one, okay, I understand what your definition, true justified belief. I'd want to go after 2 things: your definition of truth and the definition of justification. You said, well, I just presuppose that my
truth is that which corresponds to reality.
Right, which means you can't know what truth is unless you know what reality is.
Knowledge isn't relevant here. I'm only talking about truth. Truth is not arbitrary. Truth is that which corresponds to reality. Knowledge is irrelevant to truth. Knowledge does not in any way affect truth at all. Knowledge has 0 effect on truth. So truth is not arbitrary.
Correct. I agree with that. But I'm saying, using your definition, you can't actually have any knowledge of what truth is. You can't know that your definition of a truth is true.
It doesn't make a difference because that's not in my definition.
Okay, let me try it this way. So you were talking about, you just presuppose that your sense perception is a reliable indicator of truth.
Yep.
I mean, do you really just presuppose that, or do you have any kind of reason or justification for believing that? I mean, how do you know the world isn't just an illusion?
I don't need to. Not relevant to my definition of knowledge.
Well, if you want to actually get knowledge, it is, because otherwise you're just being arbitrary.
Again, now you're presupposing your definition of knowledge. But my definition of knowledge has been met. So again, what is it about your definitions that mine doesn't meet?
The non-arbitrariness. So
okay,
you're just arbitrarily deciding. You're just arbitrarily deciding that your sense perception leads to truth.
So how what's the difference here? Why is your definition of requiring God less arbitrary than mine? I don't get it.
Because mine isn't internally contradictory and yours is.
Well, there was no internal contradiction there.
Well, just because you claim that there isn't doesn't mean that there wasn't. So I want to chase after the sense perception thing.
Arbitrary and internal. Wait, stop. So arbitrary and internal contradictions are literally 2 different things. You can't say it's arbitrary because it has an internal contradiction. That those are literally 2 separate things.
I know they're separate concepts, but I'm saying that your definition has both.
Okay, so I proved it is not arbitrary. Because truth isn't
arbitrarily privileging your sense perception over other.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true, and I'm saying that's the truth, the same of your God here. So I'm asking, what's the difference?
No, it's not arbitrary. My
what's the difference?
Adherence to the Christian God is not arbitrary.
I'm asking you, what's the difference? What is the difference that shows one is arbitrary and one is not arbitrary?
Okay, well, at that point, if you want me to illustrate why my belief in God isn't arbitrary versus other beliefs, I'd have to talk about other belief systems to explain why they're internally contradictory.
Those are 2 separate things. You can't say the reason it's not arbitrary is because those are internally contradictory. Those are literally 2 separate things. That doesn't follow. That's literally an invalid argument. So if you want to say that if you want to say that one set of criteria is arbitrary and yours is not arbitrary, you can't use internal contradiction as a way to do that. You could say this worldview is internally inconsistent and yours isn't, but that's a separate argument from saying they're arbitrary. Those words literally mean different things.
I know that. Okay, what I'm saying is, if I'm just not randomly choosing the Christian God over, Mormonism or Hindu or Islam or atheism, I'm saying my choice is not arbitrary.
Okay, what's the difference? Why is your choice not arbitrary, but my choice is?
The reason I have chosen Christianity over others is that other worldviews they're internally inconsistent and they're internally contradictory. That's my reason for choosing Christianity because it explains why other religions exist and why they're false.
The reason you're choosing Christianity is because of those. Okay, so I would just say the same thing. The reason I'm choosing sense perception is because it's the only one that doesn't entail logical contradictions. Yours entails a
Okay.
logical contradiction.
Okay, that's fine as a statement, but let's chase after that.
Sure.
So if you say, well, the only ultimate truth is empirical knowledge, okay, well, you can't verify that claim empirically.
I wouldn't make that claim. So that's not a part of the claim. That's just a basis. That's how I get to knowledge. It's
Okay, well,
that's
then-
a single justification, a single kind of justification.
Okay, well then explain a little more, like, you know, what? So you okay, so you believe in empirical knowledge, but you're not an empiricist. Okay,
Yeah, so
well,
it's one of
how
the
would
many
you verify
claims.
empirical knowledge then?
It's a part of the definition of truth if it describes reality.
So you're just saying, well, it's true because I declare it to be true.
No.
by definition.
So it's a reason to think something is true about reality.
How do you know?
So that's a different question. So if it's a reason to think something is true about reality and it's true about reality, then it's knowledge. I don't need to justify that further. That's sufficient by my definition. So again, we're gonna have to go back to your definition here. So I'm not seeing.
Hold on. Explain.
Wait. So let me clarify it this way. So
Okay.
just like we could, like when you say that my sense experience could be wrong, your revelation could be wrong. What's the difference?
Because the revelation from Scripture is absolutely infallible and cannot possibly be wrong. It's from God.
My sense experience is absolutely fallible and cannot be wrong because it's my sense experience.
Okay.
What's the difference?
Here's the thing. Well, you'd have to fill out how you verify sense experience. I mean, are you saying truth is sense experience plus other things, or is sense experience the final touchstone of what's true?
How do you verify that your revelation of God is true?
Because all other worldviews are internally contradictory and cannot be true because of that.
Doesn't work. So that doesn't
not?
show. It's like if I have 10 broken axles, I have 10 broken axles, and I say, well, the axle I'm holding works because all 9 other axles are broken. Well, that doesn't prove yours isn't broken.
Okay, I'd have to fill that out a little more. My argument is not, well, I looked at worldview 1 and it's false, worldview 2 it's false, worldview 3 it's false. Oh, and now we get to worldview number 10. That's the only one left, so it must be true. That's not the procedure that I'm saying. What I'm saying is you have to have some kind of worldview, and Christianity is the only worldview that can account for why other worldviews are wrong. So it's not an inductive argument. It's what's called the transcendental argument.
But I'm not understanding the difference there. So that what you just said seems to me like just saying that, there's 9 broken axles, therefore mine must not be broken.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the internally contradictory nature of other worldviews is further proof that Christianity is true.
So I'm still trying to figure out, you need to give me a reason to think that your axle isn't broken. Telling me the other axles are broken doesn't give me a reason to think that your axle is broken, isn't broken.
Okay, right. I understand. It's true because there is no other, let me put it this way. It's true because there is no other worldview that can make sense of knowledge claims. Lewis at one point said in Mere Christianity that he believes in God. Arguing against God is like cutting off the tree branch that you're sitting on. If you were to successfully argue against him, you're arguing against the very power that gives you the very being that gave you the power to reason. So it's not like, well, I inductively decided, this tree branch gets cut off, this tree branch gets cut off. No, because that whole procedure, that inductive procedure, would presuppose a worldview as well.
Okay, so the other worldviews here are irrelevant. If you can say yours makes sense of knowledge in some way that others can't make sense of knowledge, I would need your criterion of what that means. What does it mean to make sense of knowledge claims?
To be able to provide a worldview in which it makes sense to make knowledge claims.
If I ask you what does it mean to make sense of knowledge claims, you can't use make sense of knowledge claims in the definition. So, like,
well, I'm giving you a broad explanation.
Yeah, I need a specific one. Specific. I don't want an example. I don't want no examples. Specific definition or criterion.
No. You're asking me, don't be specific, but give me an example.
Well, no. I don't want an example. I want the criteria. So there's a difference between the criteria and an example of the criterion, right?
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so I want the criterion of what it means. What are the criteria required to make sense of a knowledge claim?
Okay, the criteria is it not a knowledge? Is it knowledge that's found in the mind of God? That's the criteria.
Knowledge found in the mind of God. Okay, why is that the criteria?
Because there is no original knowledge outside of God's mind.
So you have a circular definition, and then because you have a circular
All
definition,
become circular at some point.
nope. Well, definitions do. Criteria don't. Criteria can't be circular. So your criterion is circular, which makes it vicious. And because your criterion is circular, therefore nothing else can meet that criterion. So, for example,
with your objective.
wait, one sec. So, like, if I said my criterion for knowledge is a potato, and only potatoes can count for knowledge, therefore no other worldviews can account for knowledge because they don't account for potatoes. Like, clearly that's circular. Like that wouldn't be a reason.
Really, no, that's a false analogy. I mean, a potato.
The point was to use a reductio ad absurdum. You pick an absurd example to show that the same methodology can be applied to anything. So if you take your criterion, which is something is knowledge only if it is found within the mind of God, and in order to make sense of knowledge claims, it has to be found within the mind of God. That is a circular criterion, not a circular definition,
hold on.
circular criterion.
Okay. Well, the problem is your example with a potato is a false analogy. In fact, what you're doing is presupposing that Christianity is false and even using that example, because you're saying, well, no, hold on, let me finish. You're saying, well, you're using this criterion for knowledge with the mind of God. That's just like using a potato as a criterion for the knowledge.
Nope. This wasn't about, so the knowledge thing was just an analogy here. So like any kind of circular criterion you use will always be self-validating. So if I say, God must be a potato, and the reason God must be a potato.
After that. Can you let me finish that real quick? Okay. So you're saying, you use the example of potato. Well, the potato is the criterion of knowledge, and you use that example with a potato. I'm saying the fact that your objection presupposes that Christianity is false, because you're saying that me arguing that God's mind is the criterion for knowledge is just like arguing that a potato is the criterion for knowledge.
Nope.
Hold on. Let me finish.
Well, so I could be a Christian and still make this argument.
Hold on. I'm trying to get my argument out.
And I can't get there. This isn't presupposing Christianity is false. I could just admit Christianity is true.
Tom, just give me a second. Like I'm trying to get the argument out, and I can't get the argument out if I can only get halfway through it. Okay.
Okay, so but I'm going to give you the exact same response because I can tell you why it's false immediately. Okay. But go ahead.
Okay, so the potato, you're saying that, well, that's just like arguing that a potato could be the criterion of knowledge. Well, only if you believe that there is no creator-creature distinction and there's no fundamental difference between between the creator and a created potato. But that's precisely what Christianity denies, is that there isn't a creator-creature distinction. It presupposes the creator-creature distinction, whereas you presuppose that it's false.
Nope, that had literally nothing to do with anything I said. So my argument here is just a demonstration of what circular criterions are. This has nothing to do with knowledge or potatoes. Those are, I just replaced them with P and X or just random letters. It makes no difference here. You're claiming, based on your definition, when I asked you for what is the criterion of what is required to make sense of knowledge, you said in order to make sense of knowledge, the knowledge must be found in the mind of God, something like that.
Yes.
And so that is a circular criterion. Anytime you use a circular criterion for anything, doesn't matter if this is a knowledge claim or anything. Like what is the president of the United States? It makes no difference what you're using the criterion for. Anytime you use a circular criterion, it is self-validating. And so that doesn't show it's correct, because you could use it for something that's incorrect and it will still be self-validating. So if I said,
well, that's where you skip over the creator-creature distinction. You're saying it's just like arguing about a circular criterion for P or X or potato. No, that's the jump that's where you say, well, it's just like. No, it's not just like arguing about the criterion for some kind of created object. It's not the same thing.
P could be anything. P could be God itself. That would still be the same thing. So it would make no difference.
My definition of God.
What?
The fact that you can go from the criterion of God's knowledge would be just like P or X or potato. You're denying the creator-creature distinction in making that argument.
P is just a variable that could represent literally anything, which would include God.
No, It couldn't, because God is fundamentally different than his creation. Just because something is true of a creature does not mean it's true of the creator.
Do you know how variables in math work? Like if I say x,
I'm going through a book on complex analysis right now. I'm fully familiar
well,
with
you must have
what
made some.
variables are.
So then you know x could just be replaced with any number, any abstract number, imaginary
Right.
number, infinites, any set. It could be literally anything. So in philosophy, if you like p, not p or p therefore q, p then q, like just basic modus ponens. The p could be anything. The p could be God. You could put God in there, like. In order to have knowledge, you need God. We have knowledge. We have God, therefore knowledge. Like you can put God in one of the premises, right? This is not super hard. Like you can put God in the premise of an argument. That's a thing, right?
In order, you said you're asking if God is a thing.
No, I'm saying that you can
Your
put
connection got
God.
interrupted. I couldn't quite hear what you
Okay,
said.
so I'm saying you can put God into the premise of an argument. You say, in order to have knowledge, you need God. We have God, therefore we have knowledge, therefore God. Like you can put God into an argument, right?
Yeah, you can have propositional arguments about God.
Yeah. So that's all P is. P is one of the variables in the proposition. So if you say any circular criterion, like in order for something to count as in order for something to make sense of knowledge, then you needs to be something that's knowledge in the mind of God. You can just replace God or knowledge with P, and you have a circular criterion. Like the P
Right.
here is just a variable. It could mean
Okay,
God.
I understand. All right, I understand what your argument is, but here's the problem with the argument. Just because something is true of a created object or being does not mean it is necessarily true of the creator. That's a false move.
I don't understand what you're saying here. So you're saying that a viciously circular argument for created things isn't viciously circular for a non-created thing or something like that?
Just because something is true of a created object does not mean it's necessarily true of God. You can't just say, well, just because it's true of all other created objects, therefore it must be true about God.
I didn't say
No.
anything about created objects here. So I'm saying that a viciously circular criterion, which isn't a created object, it's abstract. So it's a logical law, probably I'd say grounded in God's nature or something in your worldview. It's a law of logic.
Yeah. Okay.
The law of logic, a viciously circular logical argument, would be self-validating. So it doesn't matter if you put in a true thing or a false thing; it's still going to be self-validating. So
Okay.
saying that in order for something to count as knowledge, you require it to be inside the mind of God. You can just replace that. In order for something to count as knowledge, you could, like, even if Christianity is true, like this definition could be false and you'd never be able to know it because it's viciously circular. So the point here is that doesn't count as a verification that is correct. It's just the definition itself says it's correct, and that's not actually, doesn't show it's true.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but you're saying, well, in this, criterion, you could just put X, you could be P, it could be any, you can put anything in there. No, not necessarily. You can't just put God in a proposition, and you can't just say, well, you can be any logical variable, therefore you can put God in that formula and it's still true. No, merely because it's true for things of our experience does not mean it's true of God.
Do you know what a tautology is? A logical tautology, not just like the colloquial definition is saying the same thing twice. I mean, in logic, do you know what a logical tautology is?
Yes, it means that it's true by definition, true by logical structure.
Sort of. It means that if you change any of the variables in the truth tree, you still get a true conclusion, no matter what,
Right.
no matter what you change.
True by logical structure.
Yeah. So that's your argument, which means no matter.
No.
Okay, what's the difference? Because if your argument is tautology, your argument is a logical tautology because you're using one of the premises in the conclusion, then that will lead to a part where no matter what you change the variable to, the God to, or the criterion of knowledge to, it'll always be self verifying. It'll always come out to be true.
Have you read anything by Kant?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with what he talks about transcendental deductions or transcendental arguments?
Yeah, I don't see how that
How would you
applies
characterize
here.
okay, well, it does, because when I argue for the Christian worldview, I'm not arguing a tautology. I'm arguing a transcendental argument. So do you believe there's a difference between a tautology and a transcendental argument?
Yes.
Okay, what is the difference in your mind?
Well, transcendental arguments don't have the structure of a tautology, for one.
Okay,
Some of
oddly
them
enough,
do.
that's a circular definition.
Well,
Can you give
no.
me more
I mean,
detail?
like, so a tautology is a specific kind of a fallacious kind of an argument.
Right.
Transcendental arguments are a set of kinds of arguments that argue from first principles. There aren't tautologies. They're literally separate categories of things. It's like saying
Right.
cosmological arguments aren't tautologies. Like some of them could be, some of them aren't.
Right.
Kant's are not tautologies. Yours is a tautology.
No, I'm saying that it is a transcendental argument. I'm saying it's not a tautology. And if you're going to say, oh no, it has to be a tautology, it's a tautology. Okay, well, tell me the difference.
Well, no, it doesn't
If,
have
if
to
you
be.
think if you think I get it wrong, tell me
No,
what
no,
the
it
difference
doesn't
is.
have to be. Like transcendental arguments don't need to be tautological. A good transcendental
Yeah,
arguments
and I don't think
don't.
mine is.
So I think yours is. That's the problem here.
Okay, why?
I'm because there's one of the premises in the conclusion. Your definition of knowledge.
Explain to me what a non-tautological transcendental argument would be.
Just one that doesn't use its premises in its conclusion.
Okay, well, give me an example.
Um, in order for logic, you need potatoes. Potatoes exist, therefore logic.
You think that's
That wouldn't be a tautology.
you think that's a transcendental argument?
Well, I just made a modus ponens version of logic since anything
I
would
mean,
count
do you
here.
honestly think that's a transcendental argument?
The best I can come up with off the top of my head, like I'm not trying to make an actual
Okay, so
transcendental argument here.
in the history of philosophy, it's sometimes said that Aristotle actually made the first transcendental argument, like his argument for logic.
Ugh.
You know, you have to believe in logic because if you affirm it, well, then you obviously affirm the laws of logic, and if you deny it, you're presupposing their truth in your denial of the laws of logic. So affirming it and denying it proves the laws of logic. That's a kind of transcendental argument, correct?
Well, no, because a transcendental argument is a deductive philosophical argument. So you have to put it into a deductive form, where it actually counts as a transcendental argument.
Right. So it would be something like you can put it in an analytical form. It would be something like P being true necessarily presupposes Q. Not P being true necessarily presupposes Q. Therefore Q, because the unstated premise is P or not P.
Sure,
Right.
that's perfectly valid. Yours doesn't seem
Right.
to be that.
Right. Okay. Well, maybe I haven't explained it well enough, but that's the kind of argument I'm
Okay,
making.
could you?
In order to affirm God's existence, you have to presuppose him. In order to deny his existence, in order to make that a sensible argument, you have to affirm his existence as well.
Okay, how? I'm not following.
Okay. Well, to give you an example, if again, the empiricism thing. If Bertrand Russell wants to say, well, no, I'm going to deny God's existence because I'm an empiricist, and there is no
I don't understand. I don't
you-
understand the
you
connection to
wanted an
empiricism.
example.
No, I don't want an
Well,
example. I do not. I'm never, ever asking for examples here. I'm asking for. You said that in order to reject God's existence, you have to presuppose God exists. So you need to explain that. I don't want examples of empiricism. I don't care about empiricism.
Well, I'm answering both questions. I'm giving you a general explanation, and then I'm giving you specifics. But anytime I give you specifics, you just ask for a general explanation again. I've already given it.
I'm not following here. So again, you're not giving specifics because the specifics is that you claim that to reject God, you need to presuppose God. How? Yes. Empiricism doesn't answer this question. Why does that need to be the case?
Because it's another worldview that presupposes God's non-existence, and it ends up destroying itself in the process.
But empiricism doesn't presuppose God doesn't exist. But I don't care about empiricism. I want to know why do you need to presuppose God in order to reject God?
Because if you reject God or you don't openly affirm his existence in your worldview, your worldview ends up being internally contradictory. And then you say, well, prove that. Okay, well, I can give you examples of worldviews, but I can't, I mean.
But that doesn't answer the question. So again, that's a shifting the burden of proof fallacy. When you're just pointing out, oh, that axle is broken. That doesn't show that your axle isn't broken. Damn it. Oh, is you back?
How does that?
One sec, you're breaking up. Pull up the, close that. You're breaking up. Okay. Mm. All right, I think you're back. Try turning your camera off to see if just do the audio might make the connection easier. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, cool. Try turning your camera off and just use your mic to see if that lessens the connection issue.
Okay.
So telling me that other axles are broken doesn't show that your axle isn't broken. And that's what I need to know is how do we know that your axle isn't broken? Saying that we know your axle isn't broken because all the other axles are broken doesn't actually is shifting the burden of proof.
But my axle actually makes the cart move.
How?
I mean, okay, here's the thing that I feel like I keep running up against. You're asking for a general explanation about why all other worldviews are true, and then I give you specifics and examples, and you say, well, I don't want examples, I want a general explanation. Well, my general explanation, I mean, if you want a general explanation, it has to stay at a general explanation. But then if you want a specific example, you can't complain that I didn't give you a specific example.
Yes, I never ever want specific examples. I will never ask for specific examples. What I'm asking for is why is your axle not broken?
Because it's the word of God and can't be broken.
So if I said my axle is not broken because it can't be broken, that obviously isn't very compelling, right?
Well, if I can show you that your axle is broken, that should be compelling. But then if you look at your broken axle and you say, oh, it's not actually broken, you're using the wrong definition of broken axle, and you try to play these, logical games and try to escape the fact that your axle is broken, well, then I can't arm wrestle a conviction out of you, but I can show you, prove to you that your axle is broken, whether you admit it or not.
Okay, so I can prove to you your axle is broken.
No.
Yes.
No, you can't.
Yes, I can. So it's pretty easy.
Said you don't know anything about reality by your own admission, which means you can't know that.
No.
You opened up your definition of you opened up and at the very beginning and said, I don't know, and I can't actually know what reality is. Well, then you can't know that my axle's broken.
No, I'm reflecting your argument back at you here, just to show that.
No, that was your definition. That was
no.
You don't know
like in the past, like 30 seconds, you said I can show your axle is broken. So,
yes.
So I'm reflecting your argument back at you. This has nothing to do with my definition of knowledge here. So if you're claiming that the reason that your axle isn't broken is because it can't be broken, and you can show all the other axles are broken, that still doesn't show that your axle isn't broken.
If my axle works and I show that all the other ones are broken,
the works part is the part I'm interested in. How do you show it works?
Because none of the other ones do.
Shifting the burden of proof fallacy. So whether or not the other axles don't work isn't evidence that yours does.
Yeah, but when mine makes the cart move properly, that's the proof.
Well, yes, but I want to know what is the moving the cart thing. What is that in the analogy of knowledge?
It would be showing that anyone who comes along and tries to prove Christianity cannot prove that it's false.
Cannot prove Christianity false.
And they don't have a worldview in which they can even discriminate.
Their worldview, remember, their worldview doesn't matter here. We're talking about what yours does. So if your axle works, it doesn't matter what theirs does. So you said that the reason your axle works is because anybody who comes along who can't prove Christianity wrong. Does that prove, like, if I can't prove your axle is broken, is that proof that it isn't broken? Like, for example, let's say
I'm making summary statements that, okay, I can be more precise about. I do understand the fact that you show me 9 broken axles. That does not by itself prove that the 10th axle is broken. I understand what you're trying to say.
Right.
I'm saying now, when I make summary statements like that, I can be more precise if you need me to, but I do understand 9 broken axles doesn't prove the 10th one is broken. My argument is not worldview 1 is false, worldview 2 is false, worldview 3 is false, therefore Christianity is true. That is not my argument. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand you're saying that. So, but to me, when I say that, when I bring up that example, that's like what it looks like from my perspective. So I'm trying to say,
Okay, well,
can
I
you
just want to make
show?
it really clear that's not what I'm saying.
Right. You've said that multiple times, and I don't want to straw man you. So you've made the claim that it's not that. But when you present your argument, that's all I can see. So I'm trying to like weed out where the difference is. So like if someone makes the argument, I have an axle that works, those 9 axles are broken. Doesn't matter. Like literally, if you never mention those other axles, that would be good. I just need to know, how do we know that your axle works? And nothing you can say about the other axles is relevant here. The only thing that matters is your axle. So anything that you do to mention the other axles is shifting the burden of proof. Literally doesn't matter, right? I mean, like nothing you could do to analyze the other axles is ever going to tell you that your axle works. So I don't care about the other axles.
Okay, that's fine. We can keep those out for a second. But at some point, it is, whether you talk to me or you talk to you or you talk to anybody, you have to start spinning your wheels at some point. Everybody has a foundational commitment. Everyone has a highest court of authority where, if you make a knowledge claim, it's like, well, how do you know that's true? Well, because that's my foundational commitment. That's my foundational belief. I mean that's true of any worldview. So you can't complain that I make God or the Bible the final court of approval, the final. I mean, ultimately, it does come down to God made it that way. Well, why is the world this way as opposed to that way? Well, God made it that way. Well, why is this true versus that? Well, because God made it that way. That's the final authority. That's the final court of appeal. But that's true of any worldview at all. It's a characteristic of worldviews that there's a final court of appeal, and there's an element of circular reasoning in every worldview. It's not the vicious circularity that you're talking about. That you're begging the question. It's the circularity of arguing for a system of truth. Anytime you argue for a system of truth, there's circularity involved. There's a difference between arguing circularly for a particular fact versus arguing circularly for a principle that applies to all facts. Those aren't the same thing.
Or a particular fact. So you're admitting that your definition is completely circular.
In the same sense that every worldview is circular when it's being defended as a system of truth. That's true of every worldview. That's true of Christianity. That's true of Islam. That's true of your definition of truth. That's true of every worldview in existence.
Okay, so my worldview starts with...
That's not the same thing as begging the question like P, therefore P, oh, look, I proved P. No, that's not what I'm doing. That's not how you defend a worldview. That's not what I'm trying to do. That's not what I'm doing. That's not what you're trying to do with your definition. That's not what worldviews... That's not what you're doing when you defend a worldview as a system of thought.
Right. So to me, it seems like that's exactly what you're doing. So let's comparing to my actual worldview. My actual worldview starts with, I think, therefore I am. Like I have an experience, and I describe that with systems of language.
How do you know your experiences are true?
They might not be, but I still experience. So it doesn't matter if they're true.
So you functionally assume that they're just true, whether or not they could be.
No. So like I have an experience. It doesn't matter if the experience itself is correct. Like whether or not I'm in the matrix or not doesn't make a difference. I still exist regardless of whether or not my experiences are accurate.
How do you know?
Because I'm experiencing stuff.
That's the circularity. I asked you how you know your experiences are true. You immediately appealed to your experience again. That's
not circular. That's not circular. So that's literally direct experience. Circularity is when circularity is when the premises are in the conclusion. I'm not using an argument here. I literally have a direct experience. So that's not an argument. I have a direct experience of it.
You claim that you do.
Yeah. Well, I'm not telling you
have
you don't.
Experience.
I'm not saying that you have knowledge here. I'm saying I have knowledge. So I have direct experience.
No. Okay. Let me. I just want to point out really clearly what you did.
Okay.
I asked, you said, what's your, explain your system of truth. You said, well, I have an experience. And I said, how do you know that experience is true? Well, I experience it.
Well, no, so literally,
That's
if I have a direct experience, no, that's not what circular reasoning is. So circular reasoning, again, you need to have the premise in the conclusion. So for me, if I have a direct experience, no. The argument here is irrelevant. There's no argument here. I have direct experience, period. There's nothing else.
You claim that you do.
You
presuppose that you do.
No, this isn't a presupposition. Presuppositions are things that you assume are true before you make an argument. I'm not assuming anything. I have a direct experience. It's not an assumption.
And you don't know that it's true unless you already presuppose your experience is valid.
No, I can't. My experience can't be false.
I can't make that clear. I asked you. You said
No. Wait. I'm not. So how can I have an experience and have the experience be false?
Well, I mean, people have incorrect sense perception all the time.
Right. So I don't care if my sense perception is correct or not. It exists even if it's incorrect. So like if I have a sense experience, everything I'm experiencing could itself be wrong, but the fact I have an experience can't be wrong.
Well, right. That's your touchstone. That's your infallible premise. The fact that I have an experience cannot be wrong. That's your Bible. That's your Word of God. That's your infallible, unmovable premise.
Right. Yes.
That's your foundation.
Correct. I agree with that.
Right. But I'm just doing that with my Word of God, with my Bible, with my worldview, with my God, with my Christianity.
So let's compare those two. So mine is my experience can't not be experience. That seems, and it would apply to literally anybody. You have an experience, your experience can't not be not experience. But it seems fairly obvious that God could not exist, and that would be perfectly fine. So why would...
No, he couldn't.
So if we compare these two, mine can't be wrong. I can't not exist. I can't have an experience and not exist. That's fairly obvious. That's fairly supported. Whereas saying being X, who we don't have any knowledge of outside of myself, can't not exist seems much...
How do you know you don't have knowledge of God?
Wait. So the knowledge part here is a different claim. So if I'm claiming that I know I exist, I have a direct experience of my own existence, and you're claiming that you would have the same thing. Obviously, you would have knowledge of your own existence. But in addition to that, there's this other thing out there, which is the God thing. And you're claiming that also exists.
Yes.
And so it seems like mine is a more supported grounds of knowledge than yours.
In what way?
Well, mine can't be wrong. Yours can be wrong, essentially.
Right, and that's my point. Is I just want to make sure that we, about the circularity and the final court of appeal. My final court of appeal is God's existence and the truth of the Bible. Your final court of appeal, which you have openly said, is your own experience of existence. You've said this can't be wrong, which is another way of saying it's infallible.
Yep.
Right.
So I agree with you on all that. So the comparison is why is...
So the touchstone is your personal experience. Well, you can't know that your personal experience is true because the claim, the only certain knowledge I have is my personal experience. That cannot be empirically verified, which means according to your worldview, you must reject it, which is the internally
again, empiricism isn't
of your worldview.
Empiricism isn't part of my worldview. So what I said is I can't...
You said experience. How's experience different than empirical?
No. So again, my empiricism is a kind of knowledge, not the only kind of knowledge. So again, these are separate categories. My claim, my starting point is I can't have an experience and not have an experience at the same time. So I can't have an experience and not exist at the same time. That is my fundamental. It has nothing to do with empiricism, separate worldview. So that seems to be a much more supported grounds of knowledge in a worldview than yours, which is that there is this other being out there that has certain properties or whatever, and is the grounds of knowledge. It seems like mine is much more supported. Why would yours not be?
Okay, so there's a distinction here that we might be hitting up against. So there's, have you ever heard somebody talk about approximate source of knowledge versus an ultimate source of knowledge?
Sure.
Okay, so an analogy I always try to use is a diving board. If you're at a pool and you're standing on a diving board, there's a sense in which in an immediate sense, the diving board is holding you up. Approximately, the diving board is holding you up, right? But there's a sense in which, in a more ultimate sense, the concrete is holding you up because it's holding the diving board up.
Right.
So that it's more ultimate. That's kind of I fully agree that there's a sense in which everybody starts with the facts in front of them. It's not like when I was born or when I first became conscious. It's not like I face planted into a Bible and I was like, oh, this is what's true. So everyone starts with the facts of experience in an immediate sense. But what I'm talking about, what's the ultimate grounding? What's the ultimate worldview? What's the ultimate justification for making sense of my experience? I think the only way that I can make sense of my personal experience isn't to appeal to that experience. It's to appeal to the worldview of Scripture, which says that God exists, God created the universe, He created humanity, He created Earth, He populated it. I think that's the only thing that can make sense of my the only ultimate thing that can make sense of my proximate experience. You seem to be conflating those two, and you're saying, well, my ultimate experience is my immediate experience. If I want to justify my immediate experience, my immediate knowledge, I can only appeal to that same thing.
Oh, right. So I wouldn't say that my experience is ultimate, like the ultimate thing that created everything, that explains everything. So I would not. Maybe I was misunderstanding what you meant by ultimate there, but I meant like,
Okay.
I definitely agree that I can't be wrong. Like I can't believe I exist and be wrong. That's not. You can't do that. So I can't have an experience and not exist, and so that can't be wrong. But it isn't.
I agree with that statement. Yes, obviously you can't. It would be basically contradictory to say
Right.
I don't exist and yet I experience things.
Right. So that's my starting point doesn't include an ultimate starting point. It just includes the proximate one, and that's it. That proximate
Well,
starting point.
right. So I agree as a literal statement of fact. You can't exist and not you can't experience something and not exist. I'm simply asking, okay, well, what's the ultimate explanation for knowing that you exist or knowing that you have an experience? I agree that you can't exist and not experience something. I agree with that. But how do you know in the first place that any of it means anything or that any of it is true?
So like, why do I exist, or something like that? But that's
No. I'm saying, how do you know you do? I agree that if you exist, you can't exist and not experience something. But how do you know that you exist in the first place? Your
well.
worldview can't explain why that's the case. I can explain. In my worldview, I can explain why I exist, and I can explain why you exist.
I'm
In
not. I'm
your
not following.
worldview, you can't
I'm not
explain either
following.
one.
So if I have an experience, and you just agreed that you can't have an experience and not exist, well, then I must exist. So I mean, that wouldn't be the ultimate explanation. So I'm not.
Oh, go ahead.
So that's not an ultimate explanation of my existence. I'm not providing
Okay.
an ultimate explanation, but I can still know I exist. I don't need an ultimate explanation.
Okay, well, let me bring it back to the analogy. This might help explain. So if you're on that diving board and you're standing on the diving board and you're not looking at the concrete, let's say you don't know what concrete is somehow, and you're just standing on the diving board, and there's another one that I'm standing on, and so we're both standing there, we're both existing, we're both experiencing our own experiences.
Yep.
And I point out, well, the reason we're able to stand here is because concrete exists. And you say, well, I don't need it. I don't know what concrete is. Who knows? I don't need an explanation of concrete. Well, no, the fact that you're able to stand there on the diving board means that concrete must exist. You can ignore the question. You can say concrete doesn't exist. You can say that it doesn't matter, but that doesn't explain why you're able to stand there.
Right. So
You're
I
able to
would.
stand there because concrete actually exists.
Right. So I would agree that there has to be something holding me up. There has to be something that is the necessary foundation of my existence.
Right.
But
what is the foundation then?
Wait. So the more reasonable position is to say we don't know what that is, and we should wait for better evidence. It would be unreasonable to presuppose it's concrete because it could be wood or glass or bricks or anything else. And so saying you presuppose it's X isn't evidence that's correct, because we could presuppose anything is there. So it seems more reasonable. Wait. Just clarify.
Okay.
So it seems like a more reasonable starting point is to not assume anything about the ultimate starting point and to just start with the proximate starting point of my existence. Why would that be a less reasonable position, just starting with the proximate one and not going to the ultimate one?
Well, my reason is because that thing where you just said, oh, we could just presuppose anything. No, you couldn't. I mean, I gave the example of empiricism, how empiricism would not explain your existence because empiricism is entirely contradictory. I can explain why Islam doesn't work. I can explain why Mormonism doesn't work. I can explain why Hinduism doesn't work. So you can't say, oh, just anything could work. No, not just anything could work. Only Christianity works.
Well, by your definition, those would all work. So if they all define
wouldn't.
themselves, so if they all define themselves as the prerequisite for knowledge, then it's self-validating. And so if they would all prove themselves correct in the same way that you prove Christianity correct. So like that doesn't work.
No, so I've actually read the Quran the whole way through. I've read Islam, or the Quran. I've read the Book of Mormon. I've read the Hindu Upanishads. So just as a really quick example, one of the things that you can find in the Upanishads explicitly is that everything is an illusion. Everything is Maya. Everything is illusion, which means I can't know that I exist. I can't know that the Upanishads are true. I can't know that I can't. I mean, it literally. I'd have to find it, but it states that there is no such thing as a logical distinction. So no, Hinduism doesn't work. It collapses. It devolves itself. It's internally contradictory. It doesn't work. Also, in the
just to clarify, you say, so if there is a problem in the text, the holy text, then that proves that it can't be correct.
well, not more or less, yeah. I mean, it's internally contradictory. I mean, or even with the Quran. One of the things that the Quran explicitly states over and over, dozens of, well, maybe not dozens, it's several times. It says that it's revelation from God, just like the Old and New Testament. But then it goes on to very clearly contradict things that the New Testament openly asserts. It says things like Jesus and God, Allah has no son. It says that Jesus didn't even die on the cross. He was replaced by like a decoy. So Jesus didn't die on the cross, but at the last moment, his disciples took the guy off the cross and replaced him with somebody else, and that replacement died. Well, the New Testament states very clearly that Jesus did die on the cross. So one of the things that the Bible says about prophets, Muhammad claimed to be a prophet, is that if they are incorrect, if they deny previous revelation, they are a false prophet. So if I take the Quran and it says, well, it's the word of God, it's the foundation, it's the concrete, I can prove that it's not, because according to its own principles, it needs to be rejected. It's false prophecy because it says that it's just like the Old and New Testament, and then it goes on to clearly contradict the Old and New Testament, which means according to the Old Testament, it must be rejected as false prophecy. So it collapses in itself. It needs to be rejected. It's internally contradictory. So you can't just say, oh, the Bible could work just like the Quran, could work just like the Upanishads, just like the Book of Mormon. The Book of Mormon has problems like that too. But no, those don't work.
Well, so if there were mistakes in the Bible, then you could say it wouldn't work either.
Well, yeah, if there are mistakes, it's supposed to be the word of God. So if there were mistakes in it, no, it wouldn't be, because it's supposed to be infallible.
Okay. Well, as you know, I'm an atheist, and most atheists and most scholars who study the Bible find lots of mistakes. Like one, Moses didn't exist, Abraham didn't exist, Cain and Abel didn't exist. So would we, if we think that, would we now have a good reason to reject the Bible just like you reject the Quran?
You'd have to get okay. I've read up on supposed Bible contradictions.
Well, that wasn't a contradiction. So I said like Moses didn't exist. That's not actually a contradiction.
Well, prove it. So you'd have to talk about. I mean, obviously there are probably hundreds of passages that atheists claim are contradictory. Okay, so yeah. I'm not convinced by any of them. I think they can all be easily reconciled. For example, I'll even give you one. There's a in Isaiah, he talks about the sky being, let's see, at one point he talks about the corners of the earth, and in another section he talks about the earth being a circle. And they say, oh, look, a square circle. It's like, no, it's poetic language. I mean, we use poetic language today, even when we talk about sunrises and sunsets. We all know the sun doesn't actually astronomically rise. It does not actually astronomically set.
Right.
It's the earth spinning.
Right. So
even today, we use poetic language.
I don't want to debate about the different things in the Bible. That wasn't the point here. So my point here was that my Bible essentially is my personal experience. My personal experience, I experience, therefore I can't not exist. No, right. That is absolutely infallible. That seems to be like the perfect Bible to start off of. And whereas as an atheist, of course, I think there's lots of problems in the Christian Bible. So
right.
I would be equally as justified in rejecting the Christian Bible as you are for rejecting the Quran or whatever. And so
I don't think so.
From my perspective, not from your perspective.
Okay.
So,
sure.
So from my perspective, why would my Bible, I think, therefore I am essentially, be not a better starting point than your Bible?
Well, because your Bible it's worse than contradictory. It's self-referentially incoherent. Again, going back to what I said earlier about Bertrand Russell, that the only infallible knowledge we have, and I if I remember correctly, he actually used the word infallible. So he borrowed Christian terminology, said, my personal experience is infallible. Well, according to its own principle, that claim cannot be verified empirically, which means you must reject it.
Well, again, I'm not an empiricist.
That it's infallible.
Not an empiricist. So
well, you just said that your personal experience is infallible.
Yeah, my personal experience is infallible. Like I can't, as you admitted earlier, I can't both think and not exist at the same time.
That's not the same thing as saying that your personal experience is infallible. It's simply saying...
Oh, yeah. Sorry, just to clarify. So I don't mean that the things I'm experiencing are necessarily true. I mean that literally just... Right. When I say my personal experience is infallible, that just means that I can't think and not exist. That's all I mean by the statement.
Right. You can't think and not exist at the same time.
Yes.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So whenever I say my personal experience is infallible, that's all I mean. I don't mean anything else.
If that's what you mean, then I would simply say, well, how do you know you exist? The Hindu Upanishads say everything is illusion. So it says your personal experience is an illusion.
Well, if you're having an illusion, you must exist to have an illusion.
Not according to Hinduism. Your own consciousness is an illusion.
I don't. Then Hinduism entails logical contradictions, and so I reject Hinduism.
That's
but
right,
mine
and that's
doesn't.
why I reject your viewpoint. It entails the same kind of logical contradictions.
Where's the logical contradiction in I'm thinking, therefore I exist?
Because you can't account for how you know you exist.
That's not a logical contradiction. It's not a logical contradiction.
Well, it's internally contradictory. You're not able to account for how you can actually.
I don't claim to.
Exist.
I don't claim to. So I'm not trying to account for the ultimate thing here. So nowhere in my worldview does it say, like, I leave out the ultimate thing. I never even reference an ultimate thing. I just say I think, therefore I exist.
Well, right, and then in going back to what you said earlier, well, I don't know anything about reality. Okay, well, you can't not talk about ultimate things. You can't walk around and not have commitments about ultimate things. It's kind of like walking around not having a commitment to whether you can breathe air. Well, the fact that you breathe air is proof that you have some kind of conviction on it. I mean, if you're going to assert that you exist, that's an ultimate claim.
Sure. So I grant that there is something in ultimate in reality. I grant that. I'm just not saying what it is. I don't make a claim about what it is.
Right. So you're saying, well, it could be concrete, it could be sand, it could be glass.
Well, I'm not saying anything about. I'm not making any claims.
Agnostic about it.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not making. Yeah, I'm completely agnostic. Why can't I be agnostic about it? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it would be like being agnostic about whether the diving board is being held up by concrete or sand. The fact that you're standing up and not falling into the water means that it's not sand. You can't be agnostic about what it is. Even if you claimed it's not, that you're agnostic about it.
I'm not sure what you're saying here. So let
me put it this way.
I think I get it. So you think that the only thing that can hold it up is the Christian God. No, I don't think that. I don't see the issues that you see. So for me, it could be lots of different things. Now you don't think it could be lots of different things, but I do. And so for me, being agnostic about it doesn't seem to entail a problem.
Okay, but right, so you can claim that, but I'm demonstrating, like I just demonstrated with the Quran or Mormonism or Hinduism. You say, oh, it could be anything. No, it can't. I just showed you it can't.
Right, but I can demonstrate the same problems in the Bible. There are worse problems in the Bible, from my perspective.
Such as?
Well, I could go into lots of them, but that's a separate point here. Because
no. I mean, this is exactly the point we're trying to get at. Why? Give me an example. Why do you think the Bible is contradictory?
So I'd have to literally go and research, because I don't usually research New Testament scholarship. I do those for very specific debates. But yes, there are lots and lots of problems with the Bible. That's
Such as?
Moses didn't exist. Cain and Abel didn't exist.
Well, how do you know?
Evidence.
There's evidence that he exists.
Nope.
He wrote several books.
Nope, didn't happen.
You're asserting that he didn't exist. You're not proving it.
Yeah. So you'd have to actually go through the scholarship on the academic consensus of what actually happened and where it was written and the time span it was written. That literally he couldn't have existed.
Okay, I'm not faulting you for not having answers to every Bible question. I'm not saying, okay, we're not having a debate about Old Testament scholarship or whatever. I'm simply asking, if you can't answer it, maybe we can have a debate later about this, but I'm simply asking, can you name one thing and give evidence for it that you think is contradictory? I mean, you asserted that Moses didn't exist, and then you didn't give it evidence for it. Okay, fine.
Yeah, I've looked at the evidence in the past, so I know that the evidence is there. I've gone through the evidence. I'm not really interested in biblical scholarship because I consider it kind of a joke. It's so laughably bad that I don't take the time to research it. Okay, but there are people who do that.
You gave a scholarly consensus. That's an unpopular fallacy.
Yeah, so I go with the people who actually take the time and care about this and actually research it. So they have the evidence.
So you can't give the evidence.
I've gone through the evidence in the past. I can't give you. Moses didn't exist. Moses didn't exist. I'm going to keep going back to this. So again, this is, you have to talk to the people who I've gone through this before. I've seen the evidence, but you're going to have to talk to the people who actually study this, because it's not. I find it way too boring. But there are, from my perspective, whether you agree with it or not doesn't make a difference. I can debunk the Bible just like you can debunk the Quran.
Yeah, okay,
But,
then show me.
wait,
I showed you an argument.
wait. So you can't debunk my Bible. My Bible, I think, therefore I exist, can't be debunked.
I've already shown you several times that I did.
Wait, how? How can I think and not exist at the same time?
Okay, well, you're I think you're kind of doing a Mott and Bailey. You're making one claim, and then I critique that claim, and then you're saying, oh no, what I was really saying is this. Well, okay, I agree that in my, when the Bible talks about human experience, I don't think you can experience something and not exist. The Bible talks about humans objectively existing, their souls objectively exist. So yeah, from a biblical perspective, you can't exist and not have an experience. You can't experience and not exist. I agree with that. I'm saying you can't prove it. You just assert it.
I can't prove that I am
From
thinking.
your worldview, you can't prove that you even exist.
How can I be thinking and not exist?
Well, I
So
don't think you can, but the reason I think that is because God exists and He created you.
Well, the fact that I exist means I must, or the fact that I am thinking means I must exist. So I've proven it from my worldview.
No, you've proven it from my worldview. You haven't proven it from yours.
My worldview again just starts with the fact that I'm thinking. So
right. So
if I'm thinking,
with your claim that you're proving.
No, I'm observing this. So I'm not proving this. I'm not trying to prove I exist.
Right.
I'm literally experiencing it.
Right. So you take for granted that your experience is true and exists, and then you use that to prove that it's true.
No. So I'm not proving anything here. I have the experience. Period.
Then
it's true.
Can't
period.
Prove that you exist.
I have the experience. Period. I exist.
You just said that you can't prove it.
Again, I don't. It's something that's true about reality. I don't need to prove it. It's true about reality, whether or not I can prove it.
Well, I'm right, but that was my challenge. You can't prove you exist, and now you're saying you're right. I can't.
I can prove it. I
can't prove it.
So reality proves it by the fact that I am experiencing it right now. I can't
but
not.
You've also said earlier that you don't know what reality is.
Independent of I don't know what reality is, but I know I exist in it.
But then you appeal to reality as proof.
Right.
But then you also say that you don't know what reality is.
So for anything you said to be coherent, you would have to demonstrate how it's possible in any worldview for me to both think and not exist. How is it possible in my worldview for me to think and not exist?
Because you can't prove anything in your worldview.
That's not an explanation. How is it possible in my worldview for me to both think and not exist?
You can't prove anything in your worldview.
That's not an answer. I asked you literally how in my worldview is it both possible for me to think and not exist? Just
okay. It's possible to prove that that's not possible. You can't think and not exist. You can prove that in my worldview. You can't prove that in yours.
You're not answering the question. So if you're claiming that I can't prove this in my worldview, then you would have to show in my worldview an example of how I can both be thinking and not existing at the same time.
Okay, give me a sentence or two and I explain. I'm just re-explaining what I said. You say, well, you've said various things which just totally conflict with one another because you're saying, well, reality proves it. But then earlier you said you don't know anything. You can't know what reality is. Oh, well, my experience proves it. Well, I can't act. And then you admit that you can't actually prove it. So you're admitting that you can't prove it.
Nope, you're conflating two separate arguments. So my first argument is that I can't know reality would not include my existence. I know I exist in reality. That part of reality I do know.
Are you not part of reality?
So I just said I do know that part of reality. So when I said I don't know what reality is, like I'm talking about the TV. I don't know the TV is there. This has nothing to do with my experience. So that is completely irrelevant to the argument I'm making here. So if you want to claim that it's impossible in my worldview to know I exist, then you would have to show how it could be false in my worldview that I could both think and not exist at the same time. If you can't do that, then I've proven I exist in my worldview just fine.
No, because you can't even, the reason why you can't prove that you exist and not think is because you can't even prove that you exist in the first place.
So again, if for you to substantiate that claim and for it not to be complete bullshit, you need to demonstrate in my worldview how I can both think and not exist. How is that possible in my worldview?
Because you can't prove that you exist in the first place.
Prove it here is irrelevant. Again, so this is an ontology claim, not an epistemology claim. You have to prove ontologically it is not possible it is possible in my worldview for me to both think and not exist. Epistemology here, proof is irrelevant. You need to demonstrate ontologically in my worldview how I can both think and not exist at the same time.
Okay, I think I've already been over this. I mean, you're asking for proof and then you're saying, oh no, I'm talking about ontology. Well, if you're talking about proof, you're talking about, how you know how you have
No, no,
justified
no.
claims.
You claimed it's not possible for me to prove that I exist and in my worldview. That's your claim.
Yeah, because I don't think you can prove anything.
Wait. So my worldview can prove that, because in my worldview, it is not possible for me to both think and not exist at the same time. Therefore, in my worldview, I've proven this. So for you to be correct that in my worldview, I can't prove this, you would need to provide an ontology in which I can both think and not exist, and then my proof would be defeated.
Well, I don't think it's in my worldview. I don't think it is possible for you to think and not exist.
Yeah,
Okay?
my worldview has
Are we
proven
clear?
that too. So how did I prove I didn't exist?
Because
How do I not prove I didn't exist?
you've repeatedly said you can't prove that you exist.
No, I can prove I exist. I'm literally existing right now. So I can't prove it to you.
Well, that's circular.
But
You're
wait.
appealing to your
So
experience.
again, in my worldview, it is impossible to think and not exist at the same time. I am currently thinking, therefore I exist. I have now proven that I exist.
Are you familiar with Bertrand Russell actually dealt with the I think therefore I am
Yes.
proof? Yeah, and he famously said that it's actually a begging the question, because you're presupposing your existence in
Nope.
when you say I think. Well, I'm simply telling you what Russell said. Russell said that if you
Nope.
say
So I've actually
have
I've
read-
actually
no,
I've
Tom,
I've
Tom, just
written
give me a
on
second,
this.
okay?
No. I'm just it's a waste of time because I've already addressed this. I've literally read and written this and talked with this about professors. Bertrand Russell was critiquing Descartes' uses of I think therefore I am, because in Descartes' usage of Cartesian dualism, he presupposes the I is a soul thingy, a non-physical thingy, and if
Okay.
you presuppose the I has some kind of an ontology to it, like it's
Yes.
physical or material or it's idealistic or it's dualistic, then it's begging the question, because then you're presupposing the I has some ontological content there which isn't supported. You can't get that from the argument. Therefore, Bertrand Russell said Descartes was begging the question because for Cartesian dualism, he presupposed the I had this soul content to it. This has nothing to do with my argument because I'm not making any ontological assumptions other than I exist. I don't claim that I'm material or that I'm dualistic or that I'm idealistic. I'm agnostic. So mine does not commit that fallacy that Bertrand Russell was critiquing Descartes for.
Okay, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, I can demonstrate you exist. I'm simply saying you cannot. You have to. You keep when in your proofs to prove that you exist. You keep appealing over and over and over to your experience. So you're taking for granted what you're trying to prove, that your experiences are meaningful in that they prove that you exist.
That doesn't make any sense. So again, in my worldview, I can't both have experiences and not exist. So I'm having experiences, therefore I don't exist. So for your statement to be true and not a straw man, then you would have to demonstrate how that is possibly not the case in my worldview, because I see there's no possible way in my worldview that is not the case. So for your argument to not be a straw man and be just completely false, demonstrably false, you would have to demonstrate how in my worldview I can both think and not exist at the same time.
Okay, I understand your challenge, but I'm saying that your proofs. Okay, I really would like an answer to this because I don't think you've answered it adequately. In your proofs to demonstrate that you exist, you literally are taking for granted that your proofs, that your experiences already prove something. So you
Yeah.
assume that your experiences are proof of your existence. Okay, you assume that and then use those as proof of the conclusion that you exist. Are you with me so far?
Nope. So like I'm not. This isn't the argument isn't where you get the knowledge from. Like I don't get the knowledge from looking at the premises of the conclusion, looking at the premises of the argument, and then looking at the conclusion and then say, I have knowledge. I get knowledge from the direct experience. The direct experience gives me knowledge. There's no argument.
How do you
here.
know that direct experience proves anything?
How can I have direct experience and not have direct experience?
How can you know that direct experience proves anything?
Because I can't have direct experience and not have direct experience. So it proves I have direct experience.
Right. No, it proves that you know God exists because you're made in his image. It doesn't prove
No. So again, I cannot.
Your ability to have knowledge and know things and know about your existence and have a proximate knowledge of anything, that's actually proof that God exists because God made you. And
Well,
you don't want to admit that
that's
he
your
exists.
position. So again,
Right,
your
yeah, that's my
position.
position.
Well, your position seems ridiculous. My position seems completely coherent. So when I say I experience, and that experience is proof that I am having experience, which is perfectly coherent.
It only proves something if you presuppose the position itself.
What am I a presupposition is something you assume is true before the argument. What am I presupposing?
Your fundamental presupposition is that you can have knowledge about your experiencing, but that's what you're supposing. That's what
I
you're
can have.
need to prove.
Well, I don't even need knowledge about what I'm experiencing. I can just have direct experience, like an ant or something. Like an ant
So
doesn't
you
have
can have
knowledge.
direct experience without having knowledge.
Yes. So like you don't need to be like have a super smart agent that can have knowledge or form beliefs. You could still have direct experience, right? Like
Okay, that might go back to our the definition of knowledge, because when I talk about knowledge, I'm not only including discursive experiences. You know, like, okay, let's look at
right.
proof.
So
Let's look at
remember, I'm
evidence.
saying you can have direct experience without having knowledge. So ants can have direct
No, I don't think that's
experience.
possible. I think it counts as knowledge.
So ants
But
have
like
knowledge.
for let me put it this way. So like if you somebody you've known really, like, your, I don't know what your life is like, but let's say that you see your mom at the store randomly and you immediately recognize her as your mom. I don't think that you go through a syllogism to have the knowledge that that's your mom. You just immediately recognize her as your mom.
Sure.
That's a direct experience. I think that counts as knowledge,
Sure.
even though it's not a discursive syllogistic procedure. Are you
Okay.
with me so far?
Yeah, I can agree with
Okay,
that.
so I think direct experience does count as knowledge. I mean, but either way, I think you're stuck, because if you say direct experience doesn't count as knowledge, okay, well then you can't know anything.
Wait,
If you do think it counts as knowledge, then you have to be able to account for how it's knowledge.
all roses are flowers, not all flowers are roses. So things can have direct experience and not have beliefs. Like ants, I don't think ants have beliefs, right?
I wouldn't call it. Yeah, for the purposes of the debate, ants don't have knowledge. Okay.
Right, but they still have direct experience, right?
Um, I mean, I think there's a sense in which that's true. Dogs and various animals respond to stimulus.
Sure. So they exist. So they have an experience, and so they necessarily exist, even if they don't have knowledge of it.
Um, since the question is more over, uh, since the question's more over, like, what do humans know? I feel like there would be kind of a rabbit trail to go off in there, because at that point we're having different definitions of direct experience and whether it counts as
Well,
knowledge or
my
not.
argument applies to both the ants and myself here. So that's the point. Is my argument, I think, therefore I exist. My ability to phrase the argument in my head is irrelevant. The direct
Hmm.
experience is where the knowledge comes from, as long as I'm able to form beliefs. And so, since the direct experience can exist without the knowledge, it's irrelevant to the argument. My argument applies both to the ants and the dogs and the people the same. And it seems like you're critiquing the fact that I presuppose the fact that my mind is able to have knowledge and beliefs and stuff. That's not a part of the argument.
Okay, let me put it this way. So regardless of whether you think direct experience has knowledge or not, if you think it does, then I think your argument is still defeated, because you have said you don't know anything about reality,
No,
or you
again,
can't know
that's a
anything.
straw man. So you can know that you exist, and you can know that about reality. Everyone can know that. When I said that, as I explained before, that only applies to external reality.
Why?
Uh, well, in mine, because we could be in the matrix. So like the TV may not be in front
Well,
of
how do
me.
you know it only applies to external reality? Can you prove that?
Yes, because it can't be false that I have experience and I don't exist at the same time.
That's what you're presupposing.
How am I presupposing that?
You've said that that's your starting point.
No, the fact that I exist is the starting point, but how am I presupposing that I cannot think and not exist at the same time? If you want to claim that that's a presupposition, you would need to demonstrate its broken axle. You would need to show how I can both think and not exist at the same time. Just saying,
Basically, here's what I think the problem is. So let's say that I was arguing. Let's say that you and I were arguing about the existence of air.
sure.
Okay. Well, we both breathe in and out air the whole time. So the only reason we can even have a discussion about whether air exists is because it objectively does exist.
Sure.
So in a sense, in a sense, you are proving my point and I am proving my point. The fact that you show up and you're alive to have the discussion at all proves that I'm right. That's the kind of discussion we're having when we talk about God's existence. Well, you say, well, I can't know anything about reality except my own existence. Well, I don't think you can know anything at all, and I think it's an arbitrary line to draw if you say, well, I can know about my own existence. No, you can't know anything.
Right. I'm claiming, and I'm asking you to justify that assertion. That seems like a straw man.
Well,
my worldview.
justify the internal-external distinction. How do you know you can know things internally but not externally? Prove that's true. In your world.
What? I'm not following what. So
You're
again,
saying
my question here
You're saying
was.
you can't know anything about external reality, and then you're arbitrarily
No.
demanding
This
that
this
you can
you're
know.
conflating two separate parts of the conversation. Earlier in the conversation, when I was saying I couldn't know anything about reality, that was in reference to external reality. That had a bunch of other entailments to it that are separate to the current conversation, which is completely separate. So
Okay.
currently, the only thing I'm claiming is that I can know I exist. That this doesn't say anything about the external world, whether it's there, whether it's not there, whether it's true, whether it's false. Completely irrelevant to the starting point. Now you're claiming I can't know I exist. Now in my worldview,
Yes.
I can know I exist. So in order for you to verify that claim, you would have to show how my knowledge that I exist doesn't count as knowledge.
Okay. Unless I've misunderstood you or what you're saying, I believe I've demonstrated this before, because you're saying I can know via my own experience, and you've said that the fact of your experience is infallible knowledge. Okay. I want you to prove that. Okay.
I
If
can't
you prove
think
it
and
by
not
me,
exist. I've just proven it.
hold on.
Okay.
If you prove it by means of experience, that's circular. If you prove it by other means besides experience, you're contradicting the statement itself. So
What?
it ends up if you're going to say that you can know or prove something about
Wait,
your
go
own
back to that part. So, if I use a means other than experience, I'm contradicting something?
Yeah, if you say that the only way I can know things is personal experience,
Well, so I never said
if
that.
you're
That's
saying
not.
that
So the only infallible grounds of knowledge, the only thing I can be my starting point, my Bible that is perfect and infallible, is my existence. Now there's other stuff too. I have knowledge of logic. I can use logic and math to describe this.
Okay.
But
if you're going to say that your Bible is your experience,
yeah,
okay, if that's the touchstone, if that's the final court of appeal, if that's where it stops, okay, I'm asking you to demonstrate that statement. If you do it by means of something, hold on, I'm just give me a second. If you demonstrate that by some means other than experience, then you're contradicting the statement itself, because the final court of appeal isn't your own experience. If you demonstrate it by means of experience, then you're reasoning viciously circularly. In either case, your argument's defeated.
no. So again, I can use other justifications that can
But then
support
they're
that.
the final court.
Wait. No. So it's still the final court, and I can still use other things to show that. Like you can have multiple lines of evidence that's called consilience. You don't need to just use that one thing. Like so, your argument's false. Like you can use multiple lines of evidence even if there is one final court of appeals.
Okay, but the problem is okay, if I'm asking you, okay, what's the final answer? What's the final court of appeal? Oh, it's my experience. But then
Yep.
if you appeal to something besides your own experience, that's no longer the
No,
final
it's
court of
not.
appeal.
So again, that's called consilience. You can use multiple lines of evidence to come to the same conclusion. There's no contradiction there. That's a silly thing to say.
No, because I understand that you can have multiple lines of evidence for things. That's the kind of thing. If I want to demonstrate that the Bible is true to somebody, I will. I can go to archaeology and other things that I think bolster its truth. But the final court of appeal is the truth of the Bible itself, because if you don't have the Bible, you don't have a worldview in which knowledge is possible. So the final court of appeal for me is still the Bible, and
Yeah, but you can explain the Bible using other things, right?
Hold on.
So you can
Stop. Just hold on. if I appeal to archaeological evidence, I'm not making the Bible the final court of appeal, because I don't think the archaeological evidence makes sense outside of the Christian worldview.
Yeah, in your worldview, that makes sense, but I don't care about your worldview here. So again, your worldview here doesn't make a difference. You're strawmanning my worldview by imposing your own beliefs here, which are irrelevant. So you can use multiple lines of evidence to support a single conclusion. So if I say the ultimate
How do you know
appeal,
that you can do that?
this is again,
How does that?
what?
How would you prove that? That's
How would I prove what?
how you're making that statement. You're borrowing tools from my worldview about.
No, I'm borrowing
you know,
nothing from your
multiple-
worldview. Your worldview is incoherent and illogical, and I've proven that. But
no,
so
you
so
haven't,
so
but,
so again, so my
when
starting
you're talking
point is I exist, and I can
You can
explain
use-
that. Wait. So I can explain that and justify it using logic. Now, of course, the logic doesn't make it true. What makes it true is that it's in a part of reality, and so that's the ultimate authority. There is the reality, and then I can explain this using logic, and I can show how it can't be the case using logic. Logic isn't the ultimate authority. The existence itself is the ultimate authority. But I can't like give you existence itself. I can't show it to you. I can't explain
Sure.
existence itself to you. But I can explain the logic to you just fine. So the ultimate source is the existence itself, which I am experiencing, and then the logic
Right.
explains that. It explains
Okay,
like
and
it-
so
like not like this is the source of it, but explains it just as words.
you say that you can have multiple lines of evidence to prove something.
Yes.
Okay, prove that. How do you know that's true? I know that's true. I can make sense of it in my worldview. How do you know that's true in your worldview?
Because I can make sense of it in my worldview.
How? I'm asking you to make sense of it in your worldview.
One example would be like using archaeology and then using climate science and then using
No, you're just stating that you can do it. I want you to explain
yeah.
how.
explain how consilience works.
How do you know multiple lines of evidence proves anything?
How do I know multiple lines of evidence proves anything? Like I'm not understanding how this is relevant to my point here.
It would be kind of like you're making a statement and you're about multiple lines of evidence, and then you're saying, oh, here are my multiple lines of evidence, but you're presupposing that having multiple lines of evidence actually proves something. How do you know that it does?
Yeah, this was an
Your
example
ultimate
that
appeal is
everyone
personal
grants.
experience.
This was not contingent on my argument here. So this was an example that we all accept, who are rational human beings, who aren't idiots. Like we know we can do this already. I don't need to justify this because it's not a part of my argument. So my argument.
You used it to. No, you used
No.
it in your
I used it to show that your silly argument doesn't work. Like you claiming that you can't. Your ultimate your ultimate authority is. You have to appeal to the ultimate authority, and if you appeal to anything else, then it's not your ultimate authority. That's demonstrably false. I can prove that is false. Now, my proof that is false doesn't need to stem from my worldview argument. My worldview argument is separate from proving that that's false. So I can prove that your claim is false, and then we can move on and say, okay, so that's wrong. Let's go back to the worldview argument here. My worldview is I start with I exist. I can't not exist. I can explain that with logic. The ultimate authority is the existence itself. That is a better grounds than yours, demonstrably.
Okay.
So
how do you know logic applies anywhere outside of yourself?
I haven't made that claim in my worldview yet.
You just stated that you can explain your worldview by means of logic.
Yes, but I'm only applying it to my own existence. So what's inside myself? Like what?
So how do you know it's objective? Well, how do you know that it's true? I mean, you're trying to convince me. So you clearly want logic to be true outside of yourself. In order to make so in order for your argument to work, logic has to work outside of yourself.
Yes, and I
Okay.
can use it because I'm using it as a language to describe the thing.
Just because
I don't. It doesn't need to work
because
outside of.
you can describe something with a language doesn't make it true.
It's true that it can describe the thing I'm describing.
Only if you know it exists, which you can't.
I do.
Prove.
So I've already done that. So
You
my
don't
existence
know
is
that
a
logic-
fact. My existence is
you
a
don't
fact.
know
I've already
logic-
proven that.
You don't know logic exists outside of your own head.
It doesn't. Logic doesn't exist outside of my own head.
But in order to prove it, in order to prove anything, it would have to be the case that it exists and is true outside of your own head.
No, it's a language.
And just because you can describe something with a language doesn't make it true.
Right. The
I can
truth.
describe unicorns. They don't exist.
Trees exist. The sentence "trees exist" isn't what makes the tree
That
exist.
does- Yeah, no, that's my point. You can describe logic. You can't
Right.
prove it exists.
So I can describe my existence, but my existence is a fact. It exists as a true thing, and I can just describe it as best I can.
Yeah, you can describe it. Which
Your
doesn't
argument
make
is
it true.
irrelevant here. So it's true that I exist.
No, you're describing something doesn't make it exist.
Right. I just said that. The word, the
Yeah,
tree exists,
so
doesn't make the tree exist.
describing logic doesn't make logic exist. Describing yourself
Logic,
doesn't make you
logic
exist.
doesn't exist. The fact that I exist is given by reality.
Logic,
So
okay,
again,
logic doesn't
your
exist.
straw man,
I
I've
think we need
debunked,
to
I've
end there,
debunked.
man.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
already been
probably.
arguing for 2 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I've debunked your
Logic
straw man
doesn't
enough
exist, okay.
times. If in order for your argument to be coherent, you would have to demonstrate how, in my worldview, I could both think and not exist. Until you can do that, your argument's been debunked. And I've shown that my worldview, my starting point of I exist, is demonstrably better than your starting point of you exist plus God thingy. So if you want to do a
Well,
closing, go for it.
Okay, well, I don't know why somebody who just said they don't believe in logic wants me to do that, but go ahead. we can pick this up some other time.
Yep. All right. Thanks. Talk to
Yep.
you later. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time to have a conversation. Do you want to give like links or some place people can find you if they're interested?
I don't really have like a YouTube presence. I just kind of do debates like this when people ask me to. So that's really, I don't have my own channel or anything. So,
All right. Cool. Thanks again for coming on. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you later.
all right, bye.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate showing up to the debate. Not interested anyway. So I got TJump shirts and mugs and shit you can check out. I want to shout out to Don Fullman, Skeptics of Middle Georgia, for sponsoring the channel as always. If anybody got any questions or anything, let me know. I will hang out in a bit and talk for a while you guys are in the chat. Check out my mugs, TJump mugs, which I don't have with me right now. I have root beer. Thank you, Still Smiling. I agree. Self-destroyed. Another victory for TJump's couch. Correct. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Frank. The Lord of Adams. This one hurt my head. Personal injury lawyer. Lawson, yes. I mean, I can agree with that. Debate Norwegian Nos. Norwegian Nos. Debate Norwegian Nos. Oy. He's got a lot of Jay Dyer crap on his. Oh yes. He's on. I put him on my work list. So Florio. I think you told me about him before, and I put him on my list. So I'm gonna send out all my emails at the end of the month, where I start setting stuff up for the next month. So he's on the list. I will send him an email. Any opinion on why there are little, if any, at all atheists in public office? Because they don't get voted in. There's only like 2 atheists, and most of them don't get voted in because most of the country is religious, and there's bias against atheists. That's why there's mostly not atheists in public office in America. There's lots of atheists in public office in other places. Charles and Solo, what was the main sticking point in the conversation? The main sticking point, well, it's precept. So the precept is they assume God exists, and they claim that all other worldviews fail, and that's their main sticking point. And my claim is that my starting point is better than their starting points. Pibathulu. Why do precepts seem to default to straw men and burden shifting? Would have been nice to hear them ascertain that Adam and Eve actually existed and was not figurative. Yes, so he was willing to do that because he asked, like, what are the contradictions in the Bible, and I could have presented those. So he probably would actually argue for that. But yes, most precepts only do burden proof shifting, which is ridiculous. Sabin, thank you, appreciate it. Keep up the good fight. I will. He's not clueless though, Adam, which is even stronger win for cognitive dissonance. Flawless victory, hail the chair. Thank you, Frank. Do precepts need to presuppose experience prior to knowledge of God? I don't know. Maybe. He'd probably say no. I think he only thinks that my worldview needs to presuppose experience, which doesn't make any sense. But City Innovation. Thank you, Rebob. Let's see. I can't think and not hate free subs. Hilarious. Florio, you could pay me $50 and you could debate me, or you could pay me $50 and I'll just debate whoever you want me to debate. Thank you, Benevolent Intelligence. Personal experience. Personal experience. That's right, it is personal experience. Let's see. How do I do banner ad? Doink. Nope. 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 That's not what I wanted. Banner ad. Doink. Nope. Chat box. Alert box. Browser image cap. Sony banner. There we go. Now I can see more of me. That's always good. See more of me. Florio says he needs to be unbanned by the Diva Scotty. Well, I charge like $20 for an unbanning because I don't run the Discord. So if you want me to unban you, pay me $20 and then I'll unban you. J Mike, what's up? Do you presuppose Eric Johnson in order to play Cliffs of Dover? I would typically say yes, but I don't actually like any of Eric Johnson's other songs. I literally just like that one and just the first minute of that song, and then everything else I don't like. Kind of like Ozzy Osbourne. Like the intro to Crazy Train is amazing, and then everything else he plays, including the rest of that song, is kind of garbage. Thank you, Frank. I hope that presupposition works out. Maybe if everyone turns into presups, then that'll give me a pop blonde. How can solipsism be that you can have knowledge of self and yet be wrong without solipsism being debunked? That's a good point. I think that if you're a solipsist and you think that you must exist, but you doubt that you exist, then solipsism would be debunked. Yes. Hilarious. You can overcome solipsism by denying your own existence. Do you think all foundationalist worldviews are circular? Sort of. Foundationalist worldviews, if you claim that there is a fundamental ontology first, then it's definitely circular. But I think it's more dogmatic and arbitrary. Foundationalism usually, because there's the Agrippa's trilemma, the three different justifications are circular reasoning, dogmatism, and infinite regress. Foundationalism is a kind of dogmatism, so it's more an arbitrariness problem. Circularity is a different kind of a problem. When someone doubts my existence, I find that slap therapy is effective. American politics is all presup. Nobody has a good argument or listens to anybody else. Technically true. I don't think they're presupposing they're right, though, but they do think they're right. Oh, cool, Rock Monster. Nice. Rock Monster, post a picture of it on Twitter, like Twitter or Discord or something, so I can retweet it. That'd be cool. Yeah, he did conflate contradiction and arbitrary a lot. Presups do that a lot, where they can conflate arbitrary and contradiction. Alundra? Japanese game. It looks 2D. It looks like Pokemon. PSX. 2012. God, that is old. If I'm the only mind exist, I should be punished for wasting it on such a boring narrative of philosophy and shit. What is my opinion on the mathematical argument for the existence of God? I think it's stupid. Math is not evidence of God. Math is just a language that humans have made up to describe reality, and the fact that it works. There's more versions of math that don't work than versions that do, like 1 + 1 = 7, 1 + 1 = 12. So the fact that some versions of math can accurately describe reality isn't evidence of God. It's just like some versions of English can accurately describe reality isn't evidence that the person who made English is God. So some sentences describe reality, like the sky is blue. Some mathematical sentences describe reality, like 1 + 1 = 2. Some sentences don't describe reality, like the sky is purple. And some mathematical sentences don't describe reality, like F = ma × 37. So math is a language just like English, nothing special about it. Have theists tried to create a formula for God at all? No. Actually, yes. I think so. Pannon. Something Pannon had the sevens formula, the Lords of Adam. So I think there is some that have tried to create a God formula. When was the last time you have been convinced in a debate? Convinced. There wasn't. I mean, it kind of depends what you mean. Like, on the main topic of the debate, like pretty much never. But I think there are smaller subtopics that I've been convinced on that I changed my position on. Like, Randall Rouser is the one that I always remember, the one that comes to mind first. But I don't. There have been a few times. 9/11. Do you think infinite regress is possible? Yes, infinite regress is possible, Indo. Does the contingency argument lead to a God at all? No, the contingency argument does not lead to a God. It leads to a necessary being, if you accept it. And the necessary being, in philosophy, being doesn't mean conscious being. It means physical or existing being. So a necessary being could be like a necessary field, quantum field, and that would be perfectly fine to explain the contingency argument. Yes, a benevolent intelligence. I conceded the 9/11 debate. I was not as prepared as Ryan Dawson, I think is what his name is, and so he did a lot better than I did. All I can say was I'll have to check that later. That was because I just didn't have the same level of preparedness as he did, so I did not do well in that debate. He didn't change my mind on anything, but he was more prepared than I was. Induction. Are you ready for your debate on critical race theory? That was supposed to be yesterday, but the person who was supposed to debate backed out, and James got a replacement. But on those kinds of SJW debates, I want more time to like look at the person I'm talking to because they're more risky debates. Like, if it was just a God debate, I wouldn't care. But on SJW debates, changeouts are tough because I need like time to actually look at their stuff and know what they're going to say. Full screen TJump. Full screen with chat. No, that didn't work. Interviews. That's fine. Raw TJump. Lol. Yes, Professor Brown is. I do definitely respect Professor Brown. I don't understand his normativity argument for logic. I think that if you have an omniscient being who knows every single fact, then it can't infer anything because it knows everything. I think what an inference actually is when you have a set of known facts and a set of unknown facts, and you're trying to make a connection between a pattern in the known facts and the unknown facts. So if you're an omniscient being, you can't infer anything. And so the only way to correctly infer is if the inference gets you to the correct conclusion. So I don't think you need normativity in inferences to do logic. Do I think the problem is evil is evidence that the Christian God does not exist? Yes, I think the problem of evil is the strongest evidence against the Christian God. If a God is morally perfect, he would not drown babies. God drowned babies. God is not morally perfect. Therefore, if the Christian God is, as it's defined in the Bible, is morally perfect, then the Christian God can't exist. It's a logical contradiction. Yes, that's true, Ryan. So if the Bible was false, you could just say that sentence in the Bible was false every time it said God is morally perfect. It's just wrong. And then the God in the Christian Bible could exist, but all of those sentences in the Bible would have to be false. So if you have to grant the inerrancy of the Bible, like most Christians think it is, then the Bible cannot both be inerrant and
the God described in the Bible be existing. So, so if you grant the Bible is inerrant and everything in the Bible is true, and that God drowned babies, then that would be a contradiction, and the Christian Bible can't be true, or the God can't exist. You're not debating against CRT. I am. I am debating against critical race theory. I do not like critical race theory. I think it has lots of problems. Standpoint epistemology does not work. That's one of the problems. I think there's three major principles in critical race theory in the original version that are fundamentally flawed, and those fundamental flaws are borne out in the more recent versions of critical race theory. God doesn't drown babies anymore. I mean, that makes him okay, I guess. Family friendly God who stopped doing murder. Was the debate on CRT going to discuss the legal theoretical framework used in graduate school? Yes. Yes, I was going to discuss the academic curriculum used in Purdue, Stanford, CUNY, UCLA, and Brown, which includes the Ibram X. Kennedy books, the Patricia Williams books, the Robin DiAngelo books, and of course the like standard stuff, the DiAngelo and Stefanik books. So all of those are in the academic curriculum of the colleges, the graduate college curriculum. So all of the crazy Republican stuff is actually in most of the college curriculum. You're going to pray I get a little woke. Well, so I'm not actually against the woke goals. Like, I'm not against inclusiveness and diversity and respecting people. I think those are all fine. But a lot of the woke arguments are objectively fallacious. And so I'm against all of the fallacious woke arguments. Like, anyone who disagrees on a definition is transphobic. That's literally the same thing as Christianity saying, oh, you disagree, therefore you're evil. You just want to sin. So I debate against the fallacies in the woke arguments, but I'm not against the woke goals. I'm not against inclusivity or rights, trans rights. I don't really care about the rights things. It's more about just debunking the fallacious arguments that the woke people use that I'm against.
Lord of Adam, what is the actual consensus on the Shroud of Turin? It's fake. The consensus is the Shroud of Turin is fake. Yeah, the consensus is definitely Shroud of Turin is 100% fake. Tom, can you give me a summary of what critical race theory is? So critical race theory is a branch of critical theory which takes the... Actually, you know what, Frank? There's a great video that explains this that I should put on the Discord sometime, but it's essentially, so critical race theory is the position that modern standards of academic discourse do not accurately portray certain things like racism in reality, and that you need a new epistemology in order to accurately assess racism. And the epistemology they use is, I think, completely garbage epistemology based off of standpoint epistemology, which is like voices that are experiencing more racism should have more of a voice in determining what racism is. And so we should listen to those voices and ignore other voices, like white voices usually. So we should listen to minority voices and ignore black voices, which is very problematic because it's like putting the plaintiff on the jury, which would be a bad idea. Debate Matt Dillahunty on woke bad arguments. I would like to do that. That would be fun. Every time a precept says God works in mysterious ways or something of that ilk, I get paid $100. Like, no, you don't. You would be Jeff Bezos rich if that was the case. You are not Jeff Bezos rich. And if you are Jeff Bezos rich, then send me hot blondes. Just mail order brides from everywhere in the world. Have you ever debated Matt Dillahunty on anything you guys agree on a lot? No, we have. We've debated together, but never against one another. Rebob, I do know you. You live like next door to me. We're neighbors. You're 6'4" and you're jacked. If someone claims that science changes so we can't take science as certain knowledge, what is your opinion on this? Well, so certain knowledge, you can just say anything. Like the Bible is certain knowledge. You can just write a book and just claim it's infallible, but obviously it's dumb. So the best knowledge is the kind that does change, is the method that will get closer to truth, because no one guesses what truth is perfectly with 100% accuracy like the first try. That's ridiculous. So the best way to get to knowledge is to create a system that can adjust based off of the knowledge of reality, and science does that. So science is a better kind of a knowledge than anything that claims to know anything with certainty. Thank you, Rebeeb. Yes. Super chats are awesome. Love super chats. Shout out to Rebeeb for supporting the channel. Lima beans. Lima beans are terrible. Lima beans are disgusting. So there's a law school program and we can learn all we need to know to argue about it from a YouTube video. Is a law school really that simple? What? So Silver Harlow, like, no, you can get a basic introduction from a YouTube video. But I actually look at the academic curriculum of like what the books are in the academic curriculum and then get the information from the books. That's how I critique the academic curriculum. I don't like just look at the YouTube video, huh? Thank you, Andre. Talk to you later. Peace out. See you, everybody. Robbie. Peace out. See you guys later. Yeah, I think it's a good time for me to hop off. Thanks for joining. I will hop off as well. And thank you guys for showing up, for watching the video. I appreciate it. Thanks for the guys who support the channel. Thanks to Robib and Don Fullman, big donors. Thank you, Lords of Adam, for watching from Twitch. Twitch support is great. I get like 4 views on Twitch or something because it's not very popular. But I'm not popular on Twitch. I want to be more popular on Twitch. I want to like crush Destiny and Vouch. Get more Twitch subs than those guys do. It'd be awesome. All right, guys. Thanks for stopping by. I will talk to you later. Hopefully, have my normal Sunday stream tomorrow and do some poker. Hopefully, with the SC guys. Then have a few debates next week, and I'll upload all my videos at the end of the month and keep going. So, thanks again. Peace out.